Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Thank you so much for tuning in. And of course, welcome to the official English broadcast of the Overwatch Pacific Championship. My name is Matt Pixie Carroll, and joining me here on this comfy couch is, of course, Kevin AVRL Walker. We are about to kick off good old-fashioned week 6.
Getting pretty deep now. I mean, this is the weekend where the second round robin resets, so we're about to head into round robin number 3 on Sunday, I believe. So, I mean, things are definitely moving along. Closing
in on the halfway point, and already had a pretty exciting tournament so far. We are actually now even approaching the point where teams will slowly stop being eligible altogether for playoffs, which is quite significant. Keep an eye out on those teams to be sure. But of course, tonight is actually going to be Hong Kong Attitude first up, facing off against, I believe, AHQ Esports. So looking more towards that. Flash Wolves, you're quite right. Looking more towards that middle to top half of the table right now. So these are two teams that are still gunning for that playoff spot. And I mean, like we say, halfway through this tournament now, this is where it's going to start getting tighter and tighter for these teams that are still not quite secure in that top 3.
I think the second round robin so far has had the most, I want to say, exciting games, the biggest turnarounds, and we're at the stage now where Hong Kong Attitude are going up against Flash Wolves, who, based on last week's performance and so far in the second round robin, shaky start, but now they look like the most dominant team again.
Yeah, and I mean, the first round robin left us in a really interesting spot, right? The standings very literally reflected the relative strength of the teams, and gave us a really good jumping off point, if you will, for how the rest of this tournament and how the second round robin has gone. So the fact that we're now looking at Flash Wolves, who after that were second in the standings and looking to kind of stay that way, the fact that they've had some good performances, some bad performances, really demonstrates that that top 3 is a lot more wide open than that first round robin suggested.
Absolutely. So we got the captains and coaches here now. We've got Mango on the left from HK.
加油，掌声！好，再来，闪电狼。
一样谢谢，就是来看我们比赛的粉丝，然后我们一样会尽全力打好每一场比赛。对，谢谢。
Thanks for coming to support us.
谢谢。
We're going to do our best tonight.
好，在比赛前呢，我们先来看一段呢场馆的安全宣导影片，请看。
Pretty tough matchup, I think for Flash Wolves. They got to be feeling really good after last week's performance.
Surely.
Especially a 3-0 against Blank Esports. Kind of unprecedented in a sort of way, you know, to beat Blank, you'd beat them 3-2. That's acceptable. The 3-0 them is something else.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like you say, unprecedented, right? Especially up till that point. And with that in mind, let's take a look at the standings and how they reflect that. Like we said, Flash Wolves currently actually sitting at that 3rd place spot. Funnily enough, would be close to being tied for 4th if they hadn't picked up that win against Blank. So that was actually quite significant, has kind of kept them in that top 3 after, like you said, some shaky performances. And then on the other side of that coin there, Hong Kong Attitude still really in contention for that 4th place spot, but now with Matchy hot on their heels, who have had a much stronger run through the second round robin than they did through the first. So I mean, as much as the top 3 look like they're leagues ahead, actually this is a lot more open than the scores suggest, because those 2 losses in Blank Esports last 2 weeks, Flash Wolves only just there because of that win against Blank, and this is a very interesting leaderboard compared to, like I said, at the end of the first round robin.
Actually, Hong Kong Attitude are struggling to sort of catch up now as well. They're 2 wins behind Flash Wolves, but not only that, they dropped a victory against Matchy last week. So Matchy, like you said, hot on their tails, and they're so hot on their tails. In fact, they've already beaten Hong Kong Attitude, and the only reason they're not higher up is because of their losses in the first round robin, where they ended the first round robin in 6th place.
Yeah.
But behind Fireball, if I'm not mistaken, who came in at 5th. So Matchy have had a lot of catch-up work to do. They've looked really good in the second round robin, but yeah, those losses from the first round robin are still holding them back.
Yeah, we are also going to go ahead and take a look at what matches we've got coming up tonight. So of course, first up, Hong Kong Attitude versus Flash Wolves, and then Flash Wolves coming up against Sun Sister immediately after that. So, I mean, these are both places where Flash Wolves are eager to pick up a win, right? They want to stay as secure in that top 3 as they can, because the more you slip now, the more room you leave for teams like Hong Kong Attitude and Matchy, especially, to break into that top 3 and bump you out of there. And Matchy being the other one you mentioned there, they had a rough run through their first round robin, and the fact that they are where they are, as much as they aren't quite catching it just yet, is phenomenal, right? It has been a really, really solid run for them. And if they keep that up, that is how these other teams like AHQ and Flash Wolves lose their playoff spots to teams like Match.
Now for Flash Wolves as well, they needed to pick up their one against Match because then they would be on 10-2 along with Blank and AHQ, and they'd be in a much more comfortable position. We're at the stage of the round robin as we're about to finish up now, where every team in the top 3 has now played against each other. All the rest of the games, theoretically now, should be wins they pick up.
Yeah, so just running through the Hong Kong Attitude lineup for tonight is, of course, going to be support and shot caller Mango Jai, K4, Jin Kao, a few others, but let's take a look at Flash Wolves instead.
I really want to test your knowledge on that one. We'll get back to you.
Zonda, Bacon Jack, Jongi, K Momo, Sinkler, and Realment.
So here we go. I'll do you the favors here. So you got a Jin Kao on your right, a Ting followed on the left as well. You got your coach, JFPS for life in the back there on his phone. Good job. K4 on the left, and I believe that's Shailin on his right.
There you go.
And of course, Mango was going to be the one on the furthest left if we got there.
He's obviously cold. He's the only one wearing a jacket. The others are just wearing their shirts.
I've been told, actually, through some of the chats I've had with players, that different sides of the stage are colder or hotter than the others. So that's actually a really interesting thing to sort of consider.
They've only got one heater. They put it on the one side. So like the team on that side is warm. That's what the home and away actually means.
Oh,
it's
right,
like the home side has the heater, and the away side is left out in the cold. Makes sense.
I mean, you got a couple more. You had a couple more guys from Flash with the jackets on as well. So you know.
Yeah. So clearly, Hong Kong Attitude on the home side.
Oh yeah. So everybody on the far side of Mango, they got the warm, and then Mango's just like, man.
He's the one closest to Flash Wolves. Sitting there like, it's getting kind of chilly over here. Yeah. I was going to make a frost.
Right, well, I mean, let's actually take a look at some of the pickups from the players as well in terms of what their most picked heroes are. K4, the main DPS of the team. He's been playing the top Genji as well as Soldier. He's the kind of do-it-all DPS of that lineup.
And something that's becoming increasingly crucial in this triple DPS meta as well. You need someone who can reliably play all your hit scan and have Genji in the back pocket so that when your other DPS needs to be off Genji, you can comfortably run that. So I was about to say, and then also it's nice to have a tank who can comfortably pick up hit scan as well. And we actually saw that as well. Their A-Ting is third most picked, while Soldier 76. We don't see him on it very often, but really the first round robin showed us the necessity.
Necessity.
I just added some extra S's there. The necessity of having flexible tank players above all else, while having all-rounder DPS.
It's almost like trying to repeat Blank's success with Trill in a sort of way, but I think it feels a little bit more forced on the Hong Kong Attitude side.
Certainly.
And we're going to get over to the other side now. Flash Wolves. This is actually Jongi, not Realment.
Well,
just you can actually tell by the jacket on the back there, but it is Jongi. He's the tank player.
What if he's just
a main
jackets with Jongi?
No, that is actually
There
Jongi.
we go.
So he is, you notice he only has the 2 pickups there. He hasn't picked up any other heroes, and that's kind of fine. You don't need to. He is the main tank player. And Winston and Reinhardt, that's kind of all you need right now for that one person. And this is Zonda on your screen right here as we get into his hero picks.
Yeah,
but
and I mean, Zonda, absolute superstar DPS. The interesting thing here is actually he is their go-to Pharah, whereas...
Rank 9 on Korean servers, by the way.
There we go. Whereas K4, I believe, tends to not be the Pharah pullout. I mean, when he's on Pharah, HKA tend to be in a less comfortable position all up. Like, they would prefer to put someone else on Pharah, it seems.
Well, Jin Kao is the Pharah player of Hong Kong Attitude, and they've sort of been pulling that back. I think Hong Kong Attitude were the team coming in that at the sort of the beginnings of the triple meta in this competition in particular. Blank really set the precedent there. Hong Kong Attitude came and followed that, and they had some success with their triple DPS as well, but now I think Hong Kong Attitude, and in particular Flash Wolves, are pulling themselves back to the 2-2-2 composition again.
Yeah, well, and interestingly enough, I mean, Flash Wolves are the first team to really seem to be faltering under that triple DPS. I mean, it was in running triple DPS where they actually looked quite uncomfortable. That was where they picked up losses against AHQ and Matchy in this round robin, which was quite significant at the time as well. The only team they'd lost to was Blank. So, and I mean, now funnily enough, having won against Blank, one thing that's starting to emerge is as much as that triple DPS has been a lot of the cause of Blank's success and their overall flexibility on top of that, it's looking more like it was the flexibility above all else, and actually the teams that are sticking to their guns, the teams that can play a particular thing very comfortably are having the most success because this is a varied enough time that you don't have to run just triple DPS. We do see a bit of 2-2-2. We do see a bit of triple tank. There is enough flexibility that if you can do something better than other teams, you can just win by sticking to that.
And the interesting thing is AHQ and Flash Wolves both beat Blank by not running triple DPS. In particular, AHQ had some runs with 3 tanks and 1 DPS. Dizzy on the Soul Soldier, that he was so well protected, he did the job. Now on the Flash Wolves side, they play 2-2-2, something they're very confident with. And you know, Bacon Jack was equaling, if not outplaying, Eat Up on match day. And then of course you have Zondo, who is a fantastic player himself. So you've got both of these DPS players that are incredibly talented on the Flash Wolves side. And the addition of going back to, like you said, something that is a lot more well practiced and a lot more comfortable for the team definitely helped them out. Now I'm not saying Flash Wolves won't be able to successfully run triple DPS in the future, because K Momo was a DPS player before he joined the team. When he was still on Stay Frosty, he was a DPS player, but I think they haven't found the right compositional mix to really reach his potential, I think.
They haven't hit a groove with it yet, but they haven't needed to, as we've seen with them kind of moving back to that 2-2-2, right? And being able to pull off triple DPS when you need it, and then having something like your stronger, in this particular case 2-2-2, but just in general, a setup that you are stronger at in general, that you can pull out against teams like Blank and like HQ, these other kind of top 3, top 4 teams right now, is honestly part of what makes a strong team. I know that sounds really obvious, like, oh, if you can do everything fairly well, you're going to be fine. But as metas change throughout, especially long tournaments, we start to see where that can really trip up certain teams. And I feel like Flash Wolves nearly got tripped up by potentially overcommitting to doing triple DPS.
I feel like dropping 2 matches does say tripped up.
But
they haven't fallen completely over, but they did trip up.
Yeah. So which is the key thing. Let's go.
It's like when you step over something, you turn into a dance move. It's kind of what Flash Wolves have done right here. So.
Exactly. Like you bump into someone, but then you like spin around and toss your hat at them, and then it lands on their head. That's what Flash Wolves have done, because they beat Blank.
That's the hat toss.
That's exactly what happened. Let's go diving into this particular matchup a bit. So Nepal is going to be the map pick out from Hong Kong Attitude. I don't know that there's too much to say about this, aside from the obvious slippery flaws. My fence campaign is still ongoing. Please sign the petition. Add fences to Nepal. It's a health and safety hazard, frankly. But how do we feel these two teams are going to stack up here? Because I feel this is one of the maps where we see a lot of variance, especially in where Pharahs and things are.
Well, I do want to add in quickly as well, before we get into particular team matchups, is that Nepal is now what always has been the second most picked up control map, but it's getting to the stage where, particularly in this round robin, Nepal has had significant gameplay. I would say, without pulling out real stats here, Nepal observationally has come out almost equal to Lijiang in a lot of cases. Now, particularly by teams like AHQ and Flash Wolves have been picking up Nepal quite a lot. Now, in terms of the actual gameplay on this map, Flash Wolves beat Blank on Nepal, just to start things off with. And Hong Kong Attitude also played Nepal against Blank, if I'm not mistaken, and they got 3-0'd back. I think there's based on that sort of the round and the history of the results, it's not looking great for Hong Kong Attitude.
But it's their pick.
It is.
So clearly they must. That's the thing. Like, it's one of those situations. It's the thing. I don't know how much we can really say about the pick, because, like you said, the comparative metric would suggest that Flash Wolves aren't just favoured, they are heavily favoured, but then it's Hong Kong Attitude's pick. So there's obviously either something we don't know about or something that maybe isn't really being considered here. But like you were saying, let's take a look at just the flat one versus the other. We should get all our questions answered.
The one versus each other thing is, I think Hong Kong Attitude have 2 great Genji players. And Xiaolin is also the Tracer player. Now, the difficulty for Xiaolin is he will be competing with Bacon Jack, who, like I said earlier, is basically on par, if not better than IU up in the competition so far, as we get into Shrine to start things off.
And both teams looking pretty calm to start off with. Flash Wolves actually sitting on some DPS, interesting pull out for themselves there, but not feeling too uncomfortable. Big aggressive moves by Hong Kong Attitude, but it's just a tank trade or tank and DPS rather to start it off. Still pretty even coming on through for the opening skirmish, and It's really hard to say who has the positional advantage here, to be honest. Hong Kong Attitude do seem to be a little bit further onto it, but Flash Wolves are getting their tanks back into the mix now. Hong Kong Attitude now the ones starting to get forced back, and despite having that early time on top of the point, aren't really as entrenched as you might expect. Still plenty of room for Flash Wolves to play with here if they're smart about this, but losing Sinclair has meant that they just decide to back off instead. Do get a nice trade back onto Shaolin on the back end of that, so they might have an opening here.
That will be an opportunity for Flash Wolves to now re-enter. I think particularly gives Bacon Jack a lot of room to work with. You're going to have to really check Jongi's positioning here. This is the guy that's going to open up the place for Flash Wolves and allow Zonda to get the good positioning. He is being pressured really hard, though.
There he goes. Great move in onto K4 and also getting the Discord down onto Ting. Means that they absolutely melt him and absolutely leverage that picking up of Shaolin. They didn't have anyone harassing their backside and just went all out on it.
I'm really expecting K-Momo to take up all Genji duties of Zonda from now on. If you sort of watched last week, I did mention Zonda is your main soldier player. He's probably one of the best soldier players in the competition, and you want Zonda just to play soldier right now. So for K-Momo to pick up and be quite successful on Genji is really important for Flash Wolves' continued success.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, on this triple DPS, there are very few situations where you don't want Soldier, and even then, it tends to be a toss-up, and if you've got someone like Zonda, you're going to pick with that Soldier. Flash Wolves now with all the ultimates up, this is going to be a tall order for Hong Kong Attitude. Shaolin looking to kind of find his way into the flank, but even that is kind of getting shut down by Flash Wolves now, as the committer's going to have to come in. They're going to try and ride it off the back of K4, but he doesn't get much. In fact, it's actually Flash Wolves picking up everything in this one. 2 ultimates for 2. Flash Wolves can definitely colour themselves pleased with that.
And I think for Hong Kong Attitude as well, they need to sort of have a bit of a read on where they think Flash Wolves were sitting ultimate-wise, because in terms of advantage, we can see Flash Wolves were way ahead there for Hong Kong Attitude. Their initial in would have been to try go for a pulse bomb kill. If you can get a pulse bomb kill, you immediately eliminate a potential ultimate used by the other team. Other than that, play an ult this fight. Try and bait out the ultimates for Flash Wolves, re-enter with an advantage. That would have been and should have been Hong Kong Attitude's game plan.
Yeah, it was very all-in going for the Sound Barrier Dragon Blade. Like you said, not looking for a pick first, not creating a numbers advantage, just going, let's commit. And at that point, Flash Wolves, they're pulling out the defensive ultimates, and they have way more rope to work with there. But now with the opening here, Hong Kong Attitude are kind of sneaking on to this point, but they've lost a Ting already, so Flash Wolves shouldn't have any trouble keeping this one alive. Oh, bit of a nice pick up there onto Bacon Jack as he shot the bomb, but they're not really finding much more here on this one. K-Momo trying to keep the cleanup going, but now, Hong Kong Attitude is starting to swing back. Luckily getting the respawns in and getting Sinclair there, it should be able to close this one out. K4 doing good work there, and Jongi trying desperately to pressure him off that point, but Hong Kong Attitude did a weird bit of groundwork on that point and then got the respawn through quick enough. I feel like Flash Wolves didn't secure that when they had a chance.
I think Flash Wolves, we were watching Bacon Jack's positioning for it, but we were watching his point of view. He missed out on what I thought was a really good pulse bomb opportunity, just sort of on the side entrance there. He then went for the solo pulse bomb onto K4, missed that one. And that wasn't, A, it was an ultimate completely out, but secondly, they failed to completely clean up one of the players. Now, Bacon Jack's come back and done it this time around, so maybe it's Flash Wolves' opportunity to fight back.
It should be. That was really big as well, because that was great positioning by K4 up on that high ground with the ultimate as well. Sound Barrier out to try and keep the fight going for Hong Kong Attitude, and they do have time to get K4 back into this one if they keep it alive for long enough, but they're out of defensive ultimates now without that Transcendence available, and Sinclair can just use extra Might of Gel to his. They lose Shaolin though, so they might just pull back off this one, let it go over to Flash Wolves, let them draw out some more ultimates, and then maybe commit to it after the fact. Picking up Sinclair on the back end is nice, gives them a bit more room to play with, but he will still have the ultimate when he comes back into the fray.
And Hong Kong Attitude, they stalled out for a little bit longer there. They managed to get to 89%, but they're still in a lot of trouble because they're the ones who have to recap here. Hong Kong Attitude do not have initiative. Flash Wolves do, and Flash Wolves should absolutely use an initiative. If you didn't notice yet, came over and now changed onto the Diva. Both teams running the exact same composition. And I expect Bacon Jack to pull out really huge here, and if not, Sinclair can always bring things back in line.
All right, well, here's an early open actually from K4.
That's
trying to stop the dive, but that's big. Jongi getting onto him. Adds the Transcendence out, though. That's the only thing the Hong Kong Attitude really needed to overcome, but they don't have the DPS left for it anymore, having lost K4 and now Jinkai out of the mech. Shaolin, unless he does something crazy here, probably can't pull it off on his own, unless they somehow keep this alive long enough for K4 to get back in. Jongi as well, closing it out on Jinkai. Yeah, Flash Wolves are a bit too entrenched in this one, and nothing crazy coming out of Shaolin means that Flash Wolves should have no trouble securing this first one.
You're at the stage where K4 is even contesting the point himself. Now, as soon as he goes down, all of Hong Kong Attitude's chances to get this go to 0. Exactly as we see. We needed a couple of tanks to stay alive there, just to tank for the DPS. So that's kind of obvious anyway. But the fact is, Shaolin could survive for a little bit longer as long as there was someone else to sort of distract for him. But K4 absolutely needed either a Ting or Jin Kao to stay alive a little bit longer for him to get back in. I think Hong Kong Attitude's kind of set up there as well. The debate needs to be had whether it was worth them stalling out the extra time on the cap, but then feeding additional ultimates to Flash Wolves when they could have retreated instead.
And I think they could have got away with it if they hadn't have committed so early. I mean, they were right out with the tac visor on K4, but Flash Wolves were the ones set up. They were the ones who had all the tools, right? The moment that came out, because it was so early, Jongi went right on top of him. Even if Jongi had have gone down, they still shut down the one ultimate that Hong Kong Attitude had to play with. So let's see if Hong Kong Attitude can just kind of clean up some of their committing in this second round here. Early skirmish already falling in the favor of Flash Wolves though, as Ating gets picked off. And now Jin Kao, who does, no, he gets taken out of the mech right at the last minute.
This needs to be a fallout. Hong Kong Attitude cannot commit to this any longer. They have no opportunities for counter trades. They shouldn't be going for counter trades at this stage. It's just going to be a clean cap out for Flash Wolves, but it won't be any massive ultimate advantages just yet. Note that for Hong Kong Attitude, Mango Jar has gone back onto Anna instead of Senyata. And for Flash Wolves as well, they started triple DPS on Shrine. Now they're going back to 2-2-2. Clearly, they've decided triple DPS still isn't for them.
Yeah, I mean, I am liking this Ana since they're running the D.Va as well, but they aren't quite consolidating their position well enough here. Now Shaolin getting picked up at the backside as well. Bacon Jack doing a really good job of just keeping them harassed, stopping their retreats as best as possible. But if they can get themselves into a good position, they've got the right team comp to kind of break what Flash Wolves are running here.
Flash Wolves can get themselves 40% easy. If Bacon Jack can secure at least one Pulse Bomb kill, I don't think Flash Wolves will need to commit anything else. They don't have any ultimates anyway, but even if they got them, they should be able to win off one good Pulse Bomb and nothing else.
That's a good commit. They're actually picking up Sinclair at the top of this one. Really not much healing available now as they close out on Jongi. That is the opening Hong Kong Attitude we're looking for. And very quick commit, no hesitation, as both K4 and Shaolin went on to it. Good trades back out of Flash Wolves though, and they've still got a couple of ultimates to play with. They really want to chuck them out of Realment especially. K-Momo as well, going to buy them some time with a fairly decent self-destruct. Doesn't get any kills with it, but this is all time on the point. And even as Hong Kong Attitude's...
are committing.
Yeah, they absolutely are. Even as Hong Kong Attitude's ultimate advantage starts to mount, Flash Wolves, they've still got plenty of gas in the tank. They bought themselves the time with the sound barrier, and now Zonda opening up with the tac visor to close this one out if he can. Ating ulting on the point should buy Hong Kong Attitude a bit more time in the fight, but they're not the ones with time on the point. They're not gaining much for this. They're just giving away ultimate charge, and Flash Wolves hold.
And both teams really didn't want to give that one up. Hong Kong Attitude, they saw Flash Wolves coming back and they said, we actually want to fight this as well. Sound Barrier being used, Dragon Blade being used. They're still going to end up losing the fight, and they lose any sort of advantages they had whatsoever. It's a complete reset, kind of for both teams, but obviously way better in Flash Wolves' favor.
Absolutely is, right? Because both teams exhausted all of their resources. The Flash Wolves are the ones at 99% now. And Hong Kong Attitude, they haven't got anything to use here because they used it in the last fight. Flash Wolves didn't even need anything to use because Hong Kong Attitude, they still had to get onto the point and win a fight. I mean, even in a coin toss situation, Flash Wolves had all the time in the world to lose that at 99%. And then wear down Hong Kong Attitude and get the cap back at any point throughout that match.
I like the upgraded jerseys as well. They've moved on from the wolf shirts with the wolf in the center, and these are the same uniforms that I believe the League of Legends Flash Wolves are currently wearing at MSI. So
I don't know, I kind of miss the wolf logo.
You miss the wolf shirt?
Yeah, mainly because I only just realized that it is a wolf face. I realized that about...
What did you think it was?
I don't know, because they used to be the Yoei Flash Wolves, and I thought it was just like a generic Y shape. And then I noticed like 2 weeks ago that it was a wolf face, and it blew my mind. And then since then...
And you'll never see it again.
Yeah, I've barely seen it since then. Like, you can barely see it in the logo up there. Like, you can only see a tiny little bit of it. Like, you can't really see like the nose of it. But in any case, Flash Wolves as it is are very well set up now on Nepal, already 2-0 up. And opening skirmish, good positional advantage out of Hong Kong Attitude, but plenty of room for Flash Wolves to come back swinging here as Hong Kong Attitude are going to have to back off and move towards the point. That's good pathing out of Flash Wolves.
There's actually really good area control by Hong Kong Attitude, and for Flash Wolves, they have to find an answer here because they've lost the crucial, the priority 1 area. They have to re-enter from a different angle, and Hong Kong Attitude's, they have the ball on their side of the court right now.
Yeah,
it was a good control.
good reaction by Flash Wolves, good maneuvering, realizing that they couldn't go through that normal kind of side where teams tend to skirmish it out, went for the point instead to force Hong Kong Attitude's positioning, but patient play out of Hong Kong Attitude, plus picking up Realment, means that they were still able to take the positional advantage, cap the point, and now again, it's actually Flash Wolves still on the positional back foot. They do get a ting, good early commit out of them, and that was an environmental kill actually, and Bacon Jack picking up his counterpart means that Flash Wolves are just gonna kind of outshoot this one so far. Hong Kong Attitude definitely not in the positional advantage now, and Bacon Jack looking set to keep the rest of the I guess reinforcements kind of stuck here for Hong Kong Attitude. Stopping the cap coming through for a moment here is Mango, but that's an off the edge ting. That's a good tack visor though for K4. They should be able to keep this one in their favor.
It was an amazing one.
Flash Wolves, they were able to secure it. Hong Kong Attitude stepped up the point for just a second and haven't really committed to the follow-up there. Didn't really bring in the tanks at the right time despite a great tactical visor, and Flash Wolves using less actually secured the point.
I think it's just a mistake from Hong Kong Attitude because K4 actually shut down Zonda in the middle of his tag visor, got 2 additional kills after that. They're still in the game. Bacon Jack goes down as well after using a pulse bomb.
Yeah. And that's with the Transcendence running as well. They've still got the sound barrier, but they don't want to commit it here. Hong Kong Attitude are going full commitment, and Flash Wolves should maybe just ride this one out, but no committing their own sound barrier, and no kills being traded out either way just yet. Here we go, starting to get them running down the feed there on the side. It's okay for Hong Kong Attitude, and they're in a good position to continue sieging the point. Flash Wolves, I don't think, really needed to commit to that one, and now they're just giving away ultimate charge that Hong Kong Attitude will use in the defense, especially Jongi here.
That's actually important because that actually worked out for them. Jongi, it was a really big risk, but I mean, Mango Jai probably shouldn't have Transcendence here, even if it meant him dying. The thing for Hong Kong Attitude is they were so desperate to actually get the cap on the point, they used ultimates just to secure because they were behind. Now, the biggest mistake so far is letting the cap go in the first place, and now Hong Kong Attitude, they're losing more out of these exchanges because they had to spend so much just to get the cap back.
Again, though, it is on Flash Wolves to kind of take the precedence here. K4 with attack visor isn't really finding much with it, unfortunately. He is well set up on the point, and it stops Flash Wolves from really getting in on this one, but Flash Wolves are now killing all the people that were keeping them caught off to the side, and they're absolutely coming out swinging. K4 suddenly finds himself alone on the point as the tanks were unable to peel back. They were all dead. And there we go, Flash Wolves picking that one up easy breezy.
K4's going to stall just for like half a second there.
Doesn't even touch the point, I don't think. I think he actually died before he even touched it.
At that point, Hong Kong Attitude was so far behind, the only option was to stall. I don't think falling back was an option, but Flash Wolves were already ahead enough that you weren't going to feed additional ults to people that already had the ults themselves. Now for Hong Kong Attitude, they don't actually have too much of an opportunity to go for an ultless fight here. They can't dry run anything. They just have to play for picks if they can and that's a starting pick for them.
I was going to say, they're relying on Shaolin to get a really miracle pick, and he gets 2. That's huge. That's the sound barrier as well, which was their only real defensive ultimate.
What is going on?
Transcendence. They're just completely out-fragging. I don't know where that came from. Shaolin just found 2 amazing kills, and despite all advantages, despite all conventional thought, Flash Wolves totally dropped that one.
And for Flash Wolves, they got a little bit more time to work with, and I guess in their minds, it was a switch up. It was like, do we actually commit ults here after losing 2 players, or do we give this away? If they wanted to give it away, I feel like they should have fallen out without committing players, but they lost members as well. So
yeah, a lot.
It's a really even fight now. Both teams got a decent amount of ults.
Yeah,
Salberry committed by Realment as well, so it's going to be the final fight no matter what.
Good timing on Realment's one there, actually. Now the Transcendence as well to keep this one going. Hong Kong Attitude, the only ones losing members here. And Mango's Transcendence have already gone out. K4, he's not finding much with this tag visor, finally getting K-Momo, but he's already lost his own Diva. And now K4 going out of Jongi should be Flash Wolves securing this one nice and handy. No more defensive ultimates left. And again, unless something crazy comes out of Shaolin, never mind. I was going to say never count that guy out, but hey, there you go. And yeah, should be the final fight unless Hong Kong Attitude do really book it to this point. Flash Wolves looking to set up aggressively to not let that happen at all.
This spawn camp is so important because Hong Kong Attitude cannot fight at all. They have to run past. They have to immediately touch
booking it for the point. 2% to go. Not even going to touch it. Diva can't fly any closer to that one as she flies out of the mech. Flash Wolves, even though they dropped that one fight, they dropped it in the right kind of way, arguably. Still had the ultimate advantage, but I mean, all of that aside, the first 2 maps in Nepal there looked really solidly dominant. That is pretty much the Flash Wolves, that took out Black.
For the most part, I think, you know, a couple of mistakes from Hong Kong Attitude really put them a lot behind in a real macro sense. If we want to look at Sanctum again, you said it yourself, Flash Wolves kind of just capped it out of nowhere because That is exactly what it looked
Yeah.
like. Hong Kong Attitude had all the area control, they let it go, then they spent so much getting it back. Not only were they behind in progress, but they were behind in terms of your ult economy, in terms of any advantages that you had to throw immediately just to get your camp back. By the time they got their camp back, I mean, Flash Wolves were set up. They were set up for the retake, and Hong Kong Attitude, like we said, that fight that they got with Shaolin getting the double kills, I don't think conventionally on paper that should have happened, but it did happen.
Yeah.
Hong Kong Attitude took that advantage, but they couldn't take it all the way.
And it's also not something you should rely on if you're Hong Kong Attitude, right? You want to be able to rely on getting that positional advantage like they had, and then actually leveraging it the way you should have, which is where they failed. And then they kind of got a window back into it because of a couple of good plays, and then also Shaolin, I'm not going to say getting lucky, because he's very skilled, but lucky in the sense that, like I said, you can't bank on it. And I feel like that whole set of maps doesn't really bode well for Hong Kong Attitude, right? In the first two, they struggled to gain any kind of positional advantage. They had a couple of good fights where they committed well, and when they did that, it worked out. Most of the time they weren't. And then in that last one, when they did have positional advantage, they didn't execute on it well enough to really leverage it for all it was worth.
And I gotta say, for Flash Wolves as well, right at the end there, it was a bit of a scare, because that one fight that Shaolin picked up for Hong Kong Attitude, Flash Wolves almost gave away a bit too much in that fight. Not just the 2 kills. The 2 kills is kind of acceptable. It's like Shaolin just pulled something out of the bag. But Flash Wolves, they, like I said, they had 2 options there. One was to commit their ults and attempt to retake the fight and with their obvious ult advantage. The second option was to fall out with what they had, reduce the amount of feeding you're giving to the other team, reduce the amount of deaths, and then re-push with said advantage anyway. Now, what Flash Wolves ended up doing instead was they stayed with 4 members, did not commit ults to try and retake, and then continued to feed deaths regardless, which actually put Hong Kong Attitude in a pretty good spot for the ensuing fight. The unfortunate thing is Hong Kong Attitude still could not clean it out. Timing-wise, it was tight enough that Flash Wolves, as we saw, they just managed to get the win within the last 2%. Now, had they had fallen out earlier and just gave the point away, that could have been, you know, that could have been a lot quicker for them.
Yeah, and I like the fact that they held on to the ultimates, even after making the mistake of staying when they shouldn't have. I think that was smart, rather than doing any panic commits, which is actually something we do still see teams do a lot, right? Even if it's only like one guy, like the Winston is like, oh, I need to buy time, like, oh, we're on the point, I'll buy time, or something like that. And often there is sound reasoning for it, but it's not disciplined play, and it tends to hurt you in the long run. As much as they gave over more ultimate charge than was necessary to Hong Kong Attitude, at least they didn't commit any and still had ultimate advantage, like you said, for the next fight. Not ideal. It's not optimally played, but it was adequate.
I think the silver lining was they held on to their progress for a little bit longer. Now that's debatable as well, because they would have lost a little bit of progress had they fallen out, but then they could have re-attacked earlier as well with more advantage, because they didn't feed ults back to the other team.
And possibly held an ultimate for the next fight.
And I think that would have been a cleaner play from Flash Wolves. So, you know, again, coming from me, it's a bit of a case of, you know, win more. And that's actually, this is a new one we haven't seen yet before, but let's take a look at some of the heroes used from both the teams across the stages.
Yeah, I think this is interesting because we were actually talking about their particular lineups, and the thing we noted was on that very first one, both teams came out with a triple DPS, and after that, both teams did various forms of 2-2-2. And we actually have what they ended on. So Hong Kong Attitude actually did start the first map. I believe it was Shrine. I want to say it was Shrine with a.
I don't think this is accurate.
DPS.
There's a Widowmaker on the left, and there was absolutely no Widowmakers in play.
Is that a Widowmaker?
Is it a Widowmaker?
I can't tell what that's.
I can't actually tell. Look, they had the silhouette of a Widowmaker, and I was just like, I don't think
it was. Sort of look like
I don't think there were any Widowmakers at all. But you know, that aside, the interesting thing to note is I brought this up on Village, but when we watched Shrine, Flash Wolves at some point decided triple DPS is still not working for us. We're gonna switch K-Momo out of the Genji back onto the D.Va, and they stuck with that for the rest of the game. And I believe that was probably a safer option. I think K-Momo's Genji has been really picking up. It may still not be on Zondra's level of Genji, but Zondra is a kind of a one of a kind guy. You'd be lucky to get 2 Zondras on a team. If you did, I mean, that's astounding.
And like you said, you'd rather have Zondra on Soldier anyway.
You want Zondra. Here's the thing: is something else I brought up earlier in the week is Zondra is the kind of guy is.
You mean earlier in the week? It's the first day.
Yeah.
I know what you mean.
Earlier in the night. Yeah, like last week, I basically said the Zonda effect is essentially you want Zonda on every single hero because he's good enough. You want him to play your soldier. You also want him to play your Genji because he's your best Genji and also your best soldier. And if he's playing Genji, you don't have your best soldier. And if he's playing soldier, you don't have your best Genji on it. That's an issue for Flash Wolves.
The decision basically becomes, would we rather have our second best player on Soldier or Genji?
Yes.
So is K-Momo's Genji better than his Soldier? It's got nothing to do with Zonda.
And I believe it is.
And it is. You're exactly right. The thing that does show, though, the fact that they then moved back onto that 2-2-2, because Triple DPS did also
Actually,
work.
Fireball had that same problem with Apudo.
Actually, yeah, but just hear me out. Because Triple DPS did actually work on that first one there, Flash Wolves have demonstrated a bit of a flexibility, and it is something that they struggled with a little bit early on. I don't think they're completely smooth. Like, their triple DPS is still not as clean as their 2-2-2 most of the time, I feel, but it is a flexibility that they weren't showing at the top of this round robin. So they are very clearly shoring up this weakness, and that's something that's really going to help them moving forward if they're still looking to secure a top 3.
What's interesting is I don't think Flash Wolves were losing necessarily with their triple DPS.
No,
However,
exactly.
they still decided they wanted to go back to 2-2-2 anyway. So on one hand, it's good that they can identify, look, we're just more comfortable. On the other hand, there is a comfort zone that Flash Wolves are going to eventually need to adapt out of if they want to survive in a more fluid meta.
Yeah, unless it was an exercise in flexibility, maybe there was another decision there, but you're quite right. I mean, doing well on that triple DPS is one thing. Had they been comfortable enough to stay on that for the entire Nepal, that would have been a different thing. That would have showed a much greater strengthening of that former weakness. But I do just want to move it forward a little because next map pick, Flash Wolves pick, is going to be King's Row.
I also want to mention that I would have preferred to see Flash Wolves stay on triple DPS until they started dropping stages of Nepal. And if that was then the case, then go back to 2-2-2, of which you know you're very likely to pick up the maps again.
You just want to see more of K-Momo's Genji.
It's more so for Flash Wolves to prove to themselves that in a match setting that they can pull this off. Because otherwise, you never see through, they didn't even see through one full game, how they don't get an opportunity to really test if this is something that works or not. It's kind of like, I dipped my toes in the water, too cold, sorry. You know, you don't get to find out, does it get warmer later on? Instead.
Even though your toes didn't fall off, you still went, nah.
Yeah, it's something that Flash Wolves may end up holding them back. Now, I don't think they must play triple DPS, but I think it should be an option for them. And if it's not an option that's on the table at all, it limits what they can output. It limits the adaptability that they have moving forward.
Yeah, and we're about to round out this second round robin. I mean, this is the point where really you want to have all your bases pretty well covered. I'm not going to say completely covered because that's a little bit of too much of a hard ask, right? But even so, you would hope, especially a team like Flash Wolves could, like you're saying, actually stick with something outside of their comfort zone and execute it well. Still doesn't have to be as well as their 2-2-2, mind you, but execute it well, regularly, constantly, consistently. Like I said though, moving forward onto King's Row, bit of a different story. What are we kind of expecting out of these two teams here?
This is the map where blank were held in the first cap against Flash Wolves. They couldn't get past, and it is. I mean, the whole night is basically this is where Flash Wolves also beat blank. So I don't think Honko Attitude have good.
It's like when you,
this is the whole night.
It's like when you go to the town where your parents grew up. You don't know it. You don't know that town. You don't know anything, and they're like, "Oh, this is the dairy I used to walk to," and you're like, "That's great." It's like
so essentially,
and it's not even a dairy anymore. It's like an accounting firm or something. It's closed down.
So essentially, I think for Flash Wolves, triple DPS would have been where triple DPS would have been run most likely was Control. We saw that. Now I'm not really expecting it now. Continuing on for any of the other game modes. Flash Wolves is definitely a lot more confident with the 2-2-2 on this. Particularly, Zonda is going to be full-time Soldier. I don't expect him to change off at all.
Full-time Soldier indeed. There is the chance that they maybe want to pull it out on the offense, but I think you're quite right. I wouldn't be surprised if they stick with a dive-heavy 2-2-2 like they're running right now. Even as they are running it on the defense, and Hong Kong Attitude, we'll see how well they sound this out and break it. Because they are the ones taking a little bit more of a hurt right now when, you know, when you've only got the Zenyatta, right? I know this is really basic, but when you've only got the Zenyatta, there's only so much healing you can do. You have to take your time a lot on the attack.
Alright, so check this out. Hong Kong Attitude attempting to break the bell tower, and that's important because Flash Wolves, while they're holding Zonda there, they need to keep control of the Big Ben as long as they can. This is why the fight is taking place up here, because both teams know the importance of controlling this particular area.
Oh, that's a great one. Sinclair picking up Shaolin is really huge for them. That robs them of a lot of their mobility, but the trade back onto Sinclair could be pretty big now. There we go. Careful going down should mean that Flash Wolves have plenty to keep this one alive, especially with Zonda pulling back
Zonda's
quite
out of
handily.
position.
Yeah, they do lose the mech on K-Momo, but K-Momo has enough time to get it back, especially with the rest of Hong Kong Attitude kind of going down. They're committing to this one hard, though. Suddenly getting a couple on the back end of that.
Zonda is so late.
Yeah, the respawn started to come through for Hong Kong Attitude. Zonda backed off a second time from that point because of the positioning out of Ting, and that's actually given Hong Kong Attitude the time to get on the point. Flash Wolves had a moment to recommit, didn't take it, and Hong Kong Attitude, they do take that opportunity, and hey presto, they've turned it into a cap.
They turn it into a cap, but Hong Kong Attitude should be able to prevent Flash Wolves from getting too much snowball here. That being said, they drop a couple of members. They have to just consolidate what they have remaining, which is these for Flash Wolves actually. Flash Wolves are going to prevent Hong Kong Attitude from getting any sort of snowball advantage moving through. They have enough members where they cleaned up a couple of extra from Hong Kong Attitude that it's not going to be a case where Hong Kong Attitude just spawn camp Flash Wolves. Flash Wolves will be able to mount a defense around the bookstore. In fact, even under the archway, shouldn't be out of the question at all.
Yeah, no, I like this by Bacon Jack, just going on that very aggressive harass. They know that they've got ultimate advantage, and they know that they can even do a semi-even trade if they wanted. Yeah, that's huge out of them. Like I said, I like what Bacon Jack's doing. I like his kind of work. He's a man I'd want to do some tracery business with. That did not come out right. But in any case, what is coming out right is this defense from Flash Wolves. And without really many ultimates committed, in fact, any ultimates committed, I think Bacon Jack could throw out the pulse bomb, so never mind. But at any rate, one ultimate for a successful hold, even though it was just pick-based, you'd take it.
I think this is the case where a team that is a little bit more disciplined says, although we have the members ready, we're not going to try and attempt for a retake that we're not sure of, because that's when you give the other team an opportunity to actually snowball you all the way through streets. For Flash Wolves, they said, we're not going to do that. We're going to hold our members back. You will try and chase us because that's the standard. We will punish the players that chase you, and then we will be able to hold it for Hong Kong Attitude. This could be the moment they actually break out of this archway hold.
Yeah.
But they've got to find a couple more kills, and that one Dragon Blade was only one kill.
That was actually enough, I think, with Jongi also ulting and then nearly going down. He's had to retreat as much as he stays alive.
Taking it back in Jack.
Yeah,
yes,
I mean,
they do. There it is.
It doesn't matter that they didn't kill Jongi because he had to retreat, right? What does matter is the space. They only got the one kill off the Dragon Blade. They committed a couple of other ultimates to it as well, getting Realman off the backside. I don't know if that self-destruct was quite necessary, but I mean, what's done is done. K-Momo committing his own. But it's the space. That's what matters. And Hong Kong Attitude are getting the payload moving. Flash will still have time to mount a defense, but it's not a lopsided defense, right? They don't have a big advantage coming into it.
Losing Jong again doesn't certainly help them. Flash Wolves are playing, again, quite disciplined. They're saying, we see you committing ultimates. We can decide to not play this, and now they are going to play it straight into Transcendence, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And now Zonda, he's going to struggle to get any kills here. It's just ultimates into a defensive response immediately.
Yeah, well, the only ultimates that Hong Kong Attitude had available were the only ones they needed there. I mean, Flash Wolves had stuff like the, the tactical visor, right? But Hong Kong Attitude sat on the Transcendence and Sound Barrier. They were totally fine, right? And now this is all just, the DPS throw show. That's all that's going on here. Hong Kong Attitude had the opportunity to go aggressive now that Flash Wolves are exhausted because they threw all of their aggressive ultimates into Hong Kong Attitude's defensive ultimates, and the point cap comes through. It's like, grass green, sky blue, and that's how that play tends to go.
Flash Wolves' opportunity here, and their objective should be to prevent cart movement across that first corner if they can. I do expect them to play aggressively here. K4 should be going for Dragon Blade.
Big early one looking for Sinclair. Doesn't find it. That's so massive even as he picks up Realment. And now Flash Wolves between Bacon Jack, especially if you can get a pick, and Jongi buying time with that ultimate as well. They should be able to get a decent hold here if they're quick on the play for this one. Starting to force the position now of Hong Kong Attitude, who are looking a little lean on DPS. K4 swapping over to Soldier to break this last point. Flash Wolves do give themselves a moment to breathe.
I think that was a good response.
Oh, Zonda. Oh.
I was going to say it was a good response from Flash Wolves, but now, as they sort of starting to fall back, Hong Kong Attitude taking advantage. Look, the card movement is
they had a
good.
moment.
This is now going to be a stall out from Jongi, but he's not going to be able to last very long at all.
Instead of a moment to breathe, they just kind of let the lungs empty out. Now Hong Kong Attitude, again, Shaolin doing so much harass on the backside here. This self-destruct is going to buy some time, but
what happened to Zonda
taking a dive. That's unfortunate for him there. That wasn't even an environmental one. And the ultimate on the cart, Transcendence out from Sinclair, plus that sound barrier. Flash Wolves, they're throwing everything and the kitchen sink at this one just to buy themselves time for the respawn. But K4 and the rest of DPS are staying well enough positioned. Here's Singler coming out with the
turnaround.
That's so big for them. Where did that come from? That was good positioning out of Hong Kong Attitude, but as it turns out, Flash Wolves did buy themselves just enough time without sound barrier. They did get those respawns without losing more people, having those trickle deaths, and a fast, dedicated commit onto that caught Hong Kong Attitude off guard.
It really came down to Sinclair with the Transcendence. Now, I thought it was going to be stalled Transcendence. Turns out a couple of the other key members respawned together with him, namely Zonda with the Tac Visor. That's exactly what Flash Wolves need to just get themselves back to the game. Hong Kong Attitude still have enough time for at least 2 pushes here, which means they can save ultimates on this push and then recommit ultimates on the next if they want to do that.
Corner as well to some extent. A Ting with the ultimate running. Doesn't really get much for it, just loses a lot of health. But Zonda getting picked off. That's big for K4. Good position on the side here. Keeps the healers stuck in the base.
That's a lot of kills.
That was enormous, and that should be the secure right there and then. K4 getting Zonda plus both the healers. That's massive. I mean, how did Flash Wolves let him get into that position? They tunnel vision so hard onto a Ting there.
It's really not that hard for a soldier to get there. It's fairly common these days for a soldier to be able to get through there, but the response should be...
But you should expect that, is the thing.
Yeah, I think the response should be that you need to have... What was quite fortunate for K4, I'll start with, is the fact that both supports happen to be hanging around the spawn area. So immediately K4 found targets to kill. If that wasn't the case, both Sinclair and Realmet would have had a chance to hide behind tanks, hide behind the card itself. That would have been a lot better. So in terms of timing, really good by K4, kind of quite fortunate as well. But what was the key thing for Hong Kong Attitude, especially for K4, is understanding Sinclair used the Transcendence in the last fight to save themselves. That is the key sort of defense ultimate they will have to be able to defend against that. Coming through from the flank as well, K-Momo on D.Va would have been distracted, not ready to defend against the Tac Visor. And also, from Hong Kong Attitude's perspective, they start the fight first, get the tanks embroiled into this brawl on the card itself. Suddenly, K4 comes from a flank that people didn't expect him to. That's when he succeeds.
And I think one of the telling things as well is Flash Wolves chose to defend around that corner. I don't disagree with that move, but that naturally drew the healers out from the right-hand side of the spawn for the defenders, right? Because that gives you the better sightlines to your team when they're there. If they were on the card itself, they could well have just moved around to the left-hand side, had better sightlines to their own team without being as exposed to the enemy team. So, I mean, it's just a bit of a quirk of how Flash Wolves chose to defend that. They weren't incorrect in that, but it did leave their healers more exposed than had they been on the other side, where they would have been able to duck out of K4's line of sight while still healing their own teammates.
I think Flash Wolves were put in a bit of a situation of desperation as well, where the cart position was such that it was so close, any sort of minor touch would have completed that game for them. So ideally their cart positioning that Flash Wolves would have wanted would be closer to the final bend. Is a much more defensible position for Flash Wolves, and they needed to be able to hold at that sort of point to start with. So
yeah, they clearly wanted to buy time to let it push back naturally to that, but now on the offense, and like we were expecting, running that 2-2-2.
It's not Soldier though. I said it was going to be Soldier.
You're a liar.
Well, you know what? I think it still should be Soldier, because I'm not convinced Genji will be the successful play here, but we'll see.
I am liking the Zenyatta Ana setup though, mainly because they're running that D.Va, and using the Zenyatta to break
if a Ting dies,
the enemy tanks is huge. Yeah, and already Mango going down. There's a Ting, and honestly, they're leveraging these healers for all they're worth. Look at how many people are getting caught with these biotic grenades. Add into that the Orb of Discord, and they're absolutely shredding these tanks without having that soldier.
There is a turnaround.
There is a good turnaround here, mainly coming out of Jin Kao, but Flash Wolves is still getting kills, and Jin Kao is pretty much the only one on this point. The respawns favor Flash Wolves, and they should still be able to cap this one out.
I think Hong Kong Attitude can actually draw ultimates here if they commit. It depends if they really understand it's there or not. For Flash Wolves, I don't know. It's kind of a 50-50 situation where right at the end you're saying, Flash Wolves won a couple of fights there. They're likely to have ultimates. Do we go in not for the stall, but for potentially drawing out ultimates, which could be quite useful? Flash Wolves, Hong Kong Attitude obviously decided not to there. They're going to be able to instead get a decent defense around the bookstore, and they should be able to actually Stall out the archway as well, I think.
Yeah,
Would be a good goal for them.
Bacon Jack finding nothing with the pulse bomb was a little unfortunate. That was one of their big ultimates to make room with, but now they're going for the commit to give themselves the space for the cart move. And again, shredding a Ting, a great biotic grenade landing for that one. And the Discord is doing so much work here as well. Zonda, despite the anti-heal running on him, is absolutely tearing this team to shreds. Flash Wolves are loving the way they are using this setup of the two healers. And Hong Kong Attitude, they're playing right into it with the tanks that they're running, and they don't seem to be willing to adapt, even positionally.
The problem for Flash Wolves is, I think that was an overcommit because they still have some distance before they actually hit the end of the cat. And for Hong Kong Attitude, this is now their opportunity to strike back.
Yeah,
they are going to nano. They're 100% going to nano. If they can as well, the Graviton Surge will come out to that.
If that gets, I was going to say, if this gets eaten, that is absolutely enormous, but he's going to try and position.
There it is.
Doesn't there, it goes nicely positioned, going past the Diva for that one, but already they're hitting back. Bacon Jack getting a Ting is big for that one. The self-destruct out. Zonda is still doing work, and how were they unable to follow up on that Graviton? It didn't even catch a lot of members, but it caught the right members, right? But Zonda able to get out of it and absolutely wreaking havoc now. This is absurd.
I think it only caught Jongi there, which kind of is not good enough for a Graviton Surge. And you see from Jinkao's positioning as well, you see from his point of view, he wanted something else. He was concerned about K-Moment eating up their grabs, so he kind of just got what he got given, almost, or he just took the only opportunity that he saw. Unfortunately, that opportunity, not quite enough to pick up what Hong Kong need to be able to get that win.
See, the thing is, they caught Jongi, but they still had so much at their disposal. The Earth Shatter kind of going wide there. That was one of the ultimates they had in that last fight that they didn't use. And again, a Ting finds himself with the Orb of Discord in the corner, isolated from his team. They're picking this guy off at the top of fights constantly. We see that a lot, actually, when a Ting specifically is playing Reinhardt. But I mean, it's Flash Wolves doing it well, right? It's not a Ting doing something wrong here. And now they're just looking to blast this cart right the way through to the end. And again, a Ting can barely live for a moment here. That precision German engineering apparently not precise enough. And Flash Wolves march it to the end in far more convincing fashion.
Just like Nepal, it's a case where even at the end, Hong Kong Attitude are unable to get the final contest. They're unable to even stand on the cart, stand on the point, delay it, or do anything. There's no sort of... It's like right at the end, as soon as Flash Wolves are nearing the finish line for whatever we're playing so far, whether that be on Nepal or Kings Row, they're able to just clean it out without any real final contest. A last stand from Hong Kong Attitude, if you will. Something I noticed as well, Hong Kong Attitude, a Ting has kind of dropped off for me. He started out the competition as, in my honest opinion, one of the more flashy tanks that was really impressive. Now when you look at, I don't know if it's a case of him dropping off on Reinhardt specifically because he hasn't been playing Reinhardt, he's been playing primarily Winston, but even as Winston, he often gets killed quite quickly. On Reinhardt, you see they get singled out quite quickly, and for this composition where you're running a Reinhardt with a soldier on your back line, as soon as he goes down as a Reinhardt, and I've said this every single time that we've seen Flash Wolves run into a Ting on Reinhardt, as soon as a Ting goes down, that's a push for Flash Wolves, and they will be able to get a full surround on Hong Kong Attitude. It's exactly what has happened.
And the fact of the matter is, he died at the top of every single fight. No exception.
And a missed Earth Shatter as well, didn't
he? Missed Earth Shatter. And also didn't use it in the fight before that with that Graviton, when it actually could have been.
I don't know if he got it. Did he get it in time?
He had it in time. The thing is, he went down so early while he was moving in position to put it down. I mean, honestly, previously as well, when he was on Reinhardt, he has good plays, but he hasn't impressed me a whole lot, and I mean, this
not
is
recently
a lot of
anyway.
Now on this, back on this Winston to go with a more
the older Ting would have been good.
Yeah, on a more dive-oriented comp now to try and break this one, since they only have a limited amount of time. But same thing here. This is a very slow way to push it through. It didn't work last time, but they've only got less than a minute now. Flash Wolves can just kind of run down the clock here if they're smart about this.
And there's a mercy on Flash Wolves as well, so they're sort of. I like to. This is something Blank really like to do as well. They like to run the mercy in these very low time environment of time bank, and it will be really useful. The longer Hong Kong Attitude take, the more chance of Riz is going to come into play. And Hong Kong Attitude, I don't know if going for the clock tower was really the right move because
Yeah.
it did take a long time and they still haven't really gotten a foothold in there. They're so low, look at that.
Yeah, they do pick Bacon Jack. They tried to commit to the point itself to sort of force Flashwolf's hand, but the tempo res to come out and bring back Bacon Jack, that's going to be the sound barrier out of Hong Kong Attitude. That's all they really had to leave it to. They do pick Zonda, that is a key one, and this time no res, but they've still got plenty of ultimates, but no, they don't use them. Now, and they still didn't commit the Transcendence either. They just kind of left the window open for Hong Kong Attitude to barge on through. Bacon Jack found nothing. Zonda got picked mid-tac visor, and because they went for a tempo res over a value res with a lot of time left on the clock, they actually gave Hong Kong Attitude an opportunity to get on the point. Hong Kong Attitude took that opportunity and ran with it, and now it's going to be a distance game.
The tough thing is for Flashwolves is they now don't have the ultimates to recontest the cart safely. If they recontest the cart, they risk feeding ults back in Hong Kong Attitude, who are, by the way, are at a pretty good ultimate advantage. The real tool for Flashwolves is leveraging the Transcendence as much as possible, but Sinclair can't use this unless K4 Dragon Blades. If he uses it before, K4 can choose a Dragon Blade afterwards, and that's going to be a loss for Flashwolves.
A huge pick, though, for Jongi getting aggressive on that one. This actually may give Flashwolves a window because they forced the Transcendence out of Mango just so that he could stall out the spike. But Zonda's well positioned here. Yeah, but that's the Orb of Discord on him. Deep is going, there's a Ting here, and now Zonda ready to strike back. Nearly has Tac Visor available. Gonna open out with it, no defensive ultimates available. It's only K4 who can't risk going aggressive with that. He's too squishy against that Tac Visor. Ran down the clock, and yeah.
Wow, dies with it.
On paper, did not have the ultimates to do it, but Jongi getting a pick on K4 was all it took, and that was really, really nicely done.
That's the difference there, because Hong Kong Attitude absolutely weren't at an advantage. They had both the Transcendence and a Dragon Blade, only Transcendence on the Flashwolf side to defend with. Like I said, what should have actually happened was Hong Kong Attitude should have had the initiative, not Flashwolf. Flashwolves took the fight. It was up to Hong Kong Attitude to take the fight instead. Because they got it initiated on, they lost K4 early. And that really, that one kill from Jongi is what stopped Hong Kong Attitude.
Exactly, and K4 was very obviously looking for that Dragon Blade to do, like you said, make the space, take that ultimate advantage and run with it. You know, pick off the one Transcendence while they still could. And then when the counter commit came in, they would have had the Transcendence to use. But Jongi sniffed it out. He figured out that that was what was going to happen, and he went hunting for K4. Totally paid off as well.
The win condition was for Hong Kong Attitude is to not actually initiate with Dragon Blade, but rather to initiate as a team, similar to what Flashwolves did to them anyway.
Yeah.
Force both Transcendences out due to that engagement, where Flashwolves have they have no choice. They have to Transcendence as well because they are being hard engaged, and then for K4 to lie and wait and then use Dragon Blade after both Transcendences are out and continue to secure the fight after that. And that would have been the win condition for Hong Kong.
Exactly, and that's the thing I don't like this that K4 often does actually when he's on the Genji, when he goes for those big solo plays. He does do it a lot, and that is exactly where it can cost them, because all it takes is one Jongi to shut you right down rather than a whole team. But this is a bit of a different thing altogether.
He's going to need a lot of solo plays and more here to win.
Yeah, he absolutely is. But this is also the same thing that Hong Kong Attitude were running on their first defense, where they got absolutely steamrolled, and a lot of it was a Ting getting picked. Already Flashwolves are trying to target a Ting, trying to force the head onto him. Now they're splitting him off from his team as best as they can, trying to keep Biotic Grenades on him, trying to keep Discords on him, and it's just forcing a retreat because they can't afford to lose the Reinhardt, which just gives Flashwolves space to get on the point. Now it's Hong Kong Attitude who have to commit. They must re-engage because it's unsafe for them to try and hold further down the line. Oh, this could be bad. This could be very bad, but good retreat so far to come out. He does get away with it as Flashwolves.
It is denial of ground, which is important.
Flashwolves losing Bacon Jack. It is the denial of ground, but Flashwolves, they were a little bit forced back because of this one. There was a well-timed re-engage from Hong Kong Attitude, and they should be able to hold, at least for a moment here, but Flashwolves still got plenty of time on the clock.
Yeah, good read by Hong Kong Attitude there, particularly getting K4 up in the clock tower position again, but even better read by Zonda to say, I see exactly what K4 is doing here. I will follow him, I will get back up from Jongi, and we will prevent his positioning. You actually saw right at the end, I don't know if you caught it, but K4 now going back onto that high ground position. Now that Flashwolves are no longer able to immediately get him off of Hong Kong Attitude, should be able to entrench here. They are bunkered up.
They Can go for a bit of a hero play with this, though, with that Nano Blade combo, but I would prefer them to, again, try and take Old Faithful here, pick off a Ting, but they're going to go committing to it, the Discord on him, and that Nano Blade, yeah, they're going to make it happen.
Where's
and
K4?
that was an unfortunately unfollowed Earthshatter, and indeed, where is K4? Still on that high ground, but there's no team to support him. Shaolin going to get picked off. That is sure to be a cap from Flash Robbers, and like I said, go for Old Faithful. Pick off a Ting first. They threw everything they could at him, and of course it's going to work, and then it was just about cleaning up the rest of the team. So despite a good Earthshatter that time from a Ting, it just wasn't enough, and Flash Wolves still have plenty of ultimates in the pocket to get past this.
K4 was on about 93 or 94% right at the end there, so had he managed to get Tech Visor in time, could have been the difference. And I said, where's K4? Because K4, he was still doing damage from the clock tower. If he just managed to get Tech Visor in time, he could have been able to maybe get a turnaround in there. The timing was off for him. He did get picked off in the end anyway. And now it's going to be really tough. They still have ultimates, but the distance Flash Wolves have to get is not a lot.
Yeah, not a lot at all, and like I said, they got the tool strip as well. Jungi already going for the commit here, and Magojai working overtime to keep the team topped off.
He's getting no kills.
Nano Visor, yeah, getting no kills. No Visor left now, no Nano either. Sheldon throwing out the self-destruct, but they're not killing anyone. That one goes straight into a Transcendence, as does the Graviton, and then they pick off Jinkao. That was absolutely disgusting.
That's a
They
disaster.
threw everything in Flash Wolves, and it got absorbed like a sponge. Flash Wolves absolutely mop up Hong Kong attitude. They clean the floor altogether, and janitorial duty puts them 2-0 up. Flash Wolves looking dominant through and through.
The really impressive thing is how you mop up with the sponge, but you know, we'll figure that out. We'll figure that as we go.
Well, you can mop up with a sponge, like you're just picking up water. That's what a sponge does. That's what a mop does as well. Like you ever see people mopping wrong, where they're basically just moving the water
on
around?
topic though, what was the biggest tell for me is if you Nano Visor and you don't even draw the Transcendence out of the other team, I think you've kind of lost it there and then, because that's a big deal. Like the fact that not even an ultimate was required to respond to 2 ultimates, particularly something as threatening as a Nano Visor. I mean, Flash Wolves kind of at that point, it was in the bag.
Well, and I feel like the reasoning behind it was, I mean, if you look at how far they needed to get, Flash Wolves wasn't far at all, was only just past that archway. So I can understand Hong Kong Attitude's reasoning. They were going, we've got a limited amount of time to commit to this so that we can stop them up. We've got to go for it as early as possible, but there's still a right time and a wrong time to do that. And they went just a little bit too early. They went at the wrong time, where Flash Wolves could still just pull back a little bit behind the archway, kind of mess with Hong Kong Attitude's sidelines. They should have waited just that little bit longer. It would have meant that the cart was closer. It would have felt riskier, but it would have actually been the safer play because Flash Wolves would have been more exposed, and you would have at least drawn an ultimate out of that Nano Visor combo.
You needed Flash Wolves to actually fully commit, either with ultimates or just into the fight in general.
Hong Kong Attitude tried to take the proactive play, and it backfired.
Well,
because
that's the thing.
That's not what they needed to do.
I've already said now in one map where Hong Kong Attitude should be taking proactive play and when they should not be. On their time back attack, that's when they needed to take a proactive play because they had one opportunity to leverage an ultimate advantage, and that was it. Because they didn't, Flash Wolves got the proactive play. And so now this time around, you're right. Hong Kong Attitude needed to take a more reactionary kind of play. Let Flash Wolves be proactive themselves, and then use the ultimates that you've got, and of which I think Hong Kong Attitude had more of, again, to be able to counter what Flash Wolves are bringing to the table. They show the hand, and you respond with what you have to get the perfect counter.
And I was actually just about to say, it's really interesting. This is a trend we're starting to notice with Hong Kong Attitude. They are a great team at reading the situation. If they are given even the slightest opportunity, they'll take it and they'll run with it, and it often works out well for them. And it looks like a really, really good, clever, smart play. They identify an opportunity, they commit to it, and the commit works. That is the making of a good team. Like on paper, you're like, cool, that's what a team ought to do. But what they then fail to do, right? If you give them a window, if you give them an opening, they go for it and they take it, but they fail to making the open for themselves, right? They fail to open the window. They can't make the play happen. They can only let it be handed to them. But it doesn't take much for it to be handed to them.
I think on the well, actually, what we saying?
I was just gonna say, because of course standings up here, Flash Wolves now comfortably 2-0 up. If you're just tuning in, that is where we sit in this best of 5. And Hong Kong Attitude, not only have they yet to pick up a map here, they haven't really looked on Flash Wolves level tonight so far.
And I was just going to mention as well, as much as you say for Hong Kong Attitude rather, you know, where are they able to read the situation correctly when they're not? For Flash Wolves, on the other hand, I think they've read the majority of situations very correctly and very accurately tonight, particularly when they've needed to be a bit more proactive and when they've understood. I think Hong Kong Attitude actually ahead here. Let Hong Kong Attitude make a play. Cool, we're just going to back off back to spawn behind the archway where an Nanovisor does nothing and we don't even have to Transcendence to save ourselves. It's really calculated by Flash Wolves. They're really understanding, and even the small things like when they're defending on King's Row, understanding, okay, we're not going to recommit here, we're going to pull back and defend the archway. We're okay to lose the first cap, but what we will do is defend the second Streets phase with full force and full resource available.
Exactly, and I mean, excuse the pun, but the overall effect is less flashy. It looks really cool when a team has...
It's calculated though.
Yeah, it looks really cool when a team has a narrow opportunity and then they take it and it works and you know, they absolutely run with it and dominate the other team. Like, that's what happened on Nepal on Sanctum, right? Where they got a couple of picks out of Shaolin and then suddenly they just wiped Flash Wolves. Like, they got an inch and they took a mile, right? That looks really cool. It looks really exciting. But what Flash Wolves are doing is they're fighting inch by inch. And that is a more reliable way to play. It's a less flashy way to play, arguably. I won't say it's less exciting because it is actually very exciting. They're getting this really cool, really convincing team wipes. It just doesn't seem to come out of nowhere. It's happening in a more expected fashion because they're doing the groundwork. They're playing well.
Yeah, that particular, going back to Nepal in that particular moment is probably the biggest example of Flash Wolves reading correct. Now, I still said they could have read it maybe slightly even better. I noted...
They didn't play optimally, they played it adequately.
Yeah,
a lot of teams
I noted perhaps a more optimal response, but their response wasn't incorrect. It was still the correct response.
Yeah.
And I think it takes a lot to be able to appreciate and really acknowledge what Flash Wolves actually doing, because on paper it looks like, oh well, they just dropped the ball, Hong Kong Attitude came in and
they
wiped
got
them.
wiped. Where did that come from?
Wow, Flash Wolves just really dropped it there. But that was a choice. Flash Wolves made a choice and they said, we are going to drop this here. We are not going to commit ultimates and we're not going to fight back. But, you know, again, the more intelligent player would have probably, to instead of just dropping it, to be falling back. But the argument for Flash Wolves is, I think on their comms and on their decision-making side and captaincy, the decision on their side was to, in fact, try and buy time on the progress, which is the trade-off. Do you buy progress and trade that for feeding ult C of the team, or the other way around? That's the choice.
And like I said, the main thing there, despite all of that, is it was an adequate play where a lot of teams wouldn't have recognized it. They would have committed ultimates off the back end when they shouldn't have. So on the whole, we're seeing just a clean execution out of Flash Wolves. I mean, it's like 95% there. We're still identifying their 5%, but I mean, compared to Hong Kong Attitude 75, that's all they need to look like the better team. And we're going to see if they can close it out as a solid 3-0. We'll be back with that right after a short break, so don't go anywhere. Well, thank you very much for stopping by. It's really nice to have you here. Welcome back. Thanks for sticking with us. Well, Hong Kong Attitude are 2-0 down.
You're welcome. I'll stick around.
Yeah. The cheers for staying with me through the break. It would have been a bit lonely without you. But we're, of course, back with the English broadcast of the Overwatch Pacific Championship at the top of week 6. And this is, we expect, to be one of the defining matchups of this kind of closing few matches of the second round robin. Hong Kong Attitude, Flash Wolves, and like I said already, Flash Wolves 2-0 up. And not only that, but they're just looking cleaner than Hong Kong Attitude. I say that more in regards to Hong Kong Attitude, who are still wanting to break into that top 4. What's going wrong?
Yeah, so the storyline is essentially Flash Wolves, and there's still a redemption run. Yeah, they beat Blank. Was that a fluke, or can they keep it going? And currently, it does look like they're keeping that going. And the storyline for Hong Kong Attitude is essentially they were that team sitting comfortably at the gatekeeper position of number 4. Now, Machi have not technically taken their spot points-wise, but I want to say, essentially skill-wise, yes, they have. To me, anyway, taken the number 4 spot in Hong Kong Attitude. They're in a bit of a slump. Are they going to climb out or not? And so far, they're not doing a great job of climbing. They're climbing a bit, and they're falling back down.
Machi are the 4th place team. It just hasn't happened yet, is what it feels like. I mean, if you were doing a power rankings, that would be more what you're looking at. And even on some days, you would put Machi above maybe AHQ. So even even though the standings don't reflect it yet, Matchy feel like the 4th place team and are looking to push into top 3. Hong Kong Attitude are actually the ones with something to prove. And so far, in this series, they have actually failed to prove it.
I'm going to have to agree with that as well. I think it's not so much a case of Hong Kong Attitude falling behind a lot. I think they have some very good moments where they're nearly there. Like you said yourself, 75% of the way there is still much further than, I want to say, a good majority of the teams so far in the competition. Now, 75% is at the stage where maybe they don't look very good against Flash Wolves currently, but taking the 75% forward, if they rematch against Machi, I think they would do extremely well. I think it would be a game where Machi, it wouldn't just be I think Machi are better, they're going to win. It would be, I think this will be still very close. Machi may be favored, but I think Hong Kong Attitude will be able to surprise them as well, because on a very small scale, Hong Kong Attitude have moved up for me, but absolutely not far enough to beat Flash Wolves.
No, certainly not yet. And I guess the lucky thing is with that 75% is, well, actually, it's unfair to say it lucky. I mean, this has been just good play. In the standings, they are actually set at number 4, right? So even if they lose games like this, I mean, they've still got, I think, 1 or 2 more games tomorrow as well before this second round robin wraps up. Correct me if I'm wrong. But they're not going to totally lose their shot at a top 3 finish, right? It wouldn't be like looking at these standings, right? Let's say Fireball lose their next 2 games. Like, let's say they lose everything before the start of the next round robin. They start to look like they're in a position where they can't make top 3, right? Hong Kong Attitude, even if they lose this series, they can still be in contention for it. It may be narrower, but they can still be in contention. And at 75% of the way there, you can brush up, you can close that distance.
So I think for Machi as well, they should be, if my calculations are correct, be able to close out number 4 at the end of the second round robin, because they've won more matches where they were not expected to win. Primarily, I'm talking about the Flash Wolves match, and also
at the start of this round robin,
and also the match against Hong Kong Attitude. Now, there are certain matches that you are expected to win. Now that's against, say, Sun Sister and Detonator and Fireball currently,
as harsh
as it is to say, and there are matches that you're not expected to win, and that is against Flash Wolves. Now, I'm not expecting Hong Kong Attitude currently in their current form to be able to beat Flash Wolves tonight. However, Machi already have that in the bag, so that is one point Machi have that Hong Kong Attitude cannot get. And another point Hong Kong Attitude cannot get is the win over Machi, which Machi have as well. So that being the case, Machi have 2 extra points of wins that Hong Kong Attitude will not be able to get, and for that, I think Machi are going to be able to finish 4th.
It's interesting, isn't it, right? Because Machi are actually the team that has defined this second round robin the most, at the very top of it. After that first round robin, with the standings sat as they were, just straight, clean, top to bottom. Everyone had beaten the teams below them, lost the teams above them. It doesn't get cleaner than that. Machi, right from the word go, had a big shake-up in taking out Flash Wolves, and I believe AHQ as well. A couple of really, really quick pickups, and then as much as they've had a bit of, if you will, mixed results since then, I say mixed, they've still been on the good side of mixed. They have defined this round robin in that we talk about Flash Wolves now as redeeming themselves rather than as looking good, even though they just beat blank 3-0. Now, had they not lost to Machi, we would have gone, wow, Flash Wolves is now the number 1 team, right? Whereas instead we're going, was it a fluke? Is it consistent? Where do these teams sit? And that's all been defined by Machi. So now we're definitely not going to finish the second round robin the same way we did at the start. And that Machi thing has kind of snowballed into what we're talking about now, where we're going, look, Hong Kong Attitude, not even the gatekeepers to 4th place anymore, even though the standings say that they are.
Well, speaking of standings, I actually think what would be really important is to not look at the standings as they currently are, but if you were to split the standings up into here are the round robin 1 standings, and here are separate round robin 2 standings, the separate round robin 2 standings would be more accurate of the current climate of where the teams stand.
Absolutely. And I mean, even so, like, when you add the first round robin into it, I feel like the only significant differences you have are Machi will look lower than I think they should be, and Blank will look...
Blank are definitely lower. Blank, if you separate it, Blank would be, I think, roughly either 2nd or 3rd because technically Flash Wolves have lost more than they have, or they would be tied with Flash Wolves now.
I will say though, Blank will look lower than they maybe should be, but it will reflect the trajectory of the other teams. It would not so much Blank themselves, but the other teams. So I mean, just sort of carrying on that particular thought experiment of yours. But I think aside from that, actually, the rest of this is still looking pretty accurate, right? We've got Sun Sister and Detonator at the bottom. Fireball also hovering around the bottom, sometimes taking wins, sometimes not. But as Matchy are on the up, they're starting to kind of increase that gap. And then we've got the other teams like AHQ, Flash Wolves, arguably Hong Kong Attitude, still jostling in that middle ground.
You almost want to be able to identify a winner of each round robin as well. Blank obviously won the first round robin. If I was going to say for round robin number 2, AHQ are the winners of round robin number 2. They will now go through undefeated because they've already beaten Blank, they've already beaten Flash Wolves. Those are the top 2 competitors to AHQ. If my memory serves correct, AHQ also beat Machi. So for the remaining AHQ games left in the round robin, they are against the bottom 4 teams, so AHQ are expected to go fully undefeated in the second round robin, much like Blank did for themselves in the first round robin, so it's a very big and spectacular victory for AHQ Esports.
Did they beat Matchy?
Yes, if my memory serves correct. I will might have to go and read.
I'm really racking my brains about this one.
I believe they did, but if they haven't, they will still be playing yet, and the problem here is Machi. Even if that match hasn't happened and they're going to play it, I would still heavily favor AHQ.
At this point, certainly.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Like, it still matches game to... I phrased this weirdly. They are still the team that has something to prove coming into that match, is what I'm trying to say there. And the significance of that, I suppose, is even though they have defined the second round robin, even though they would be higher in the standings all told if it weren't for their round robin 1 performance, they still have something to prove coming into matchups like that. And if they were to play Blank, they'd still have something to prove. Heck, if they were to rematch Flash Wolves right now, I would say they're still the team with something to prove. So as much as
you have played Blank.
Wasn't
pretty.
Exactly. Like, that's
Aside
the thing.
from
When
one
those matchups come around, despite those early strong performances, and despite the fact that they are still on the up and up, they haven't totally set a precedent just yet, right? Then they haven't carried on that trajectory. They've got some good ones to give them a necessary boost, and now where they were, you know, I don't want to say C-grade team. I don't know. I feel like that's a wrong way to measure this, but like where they may have been here, they're now here, but the other teams are still kind of around.
This is like a lot more arbitrary than ABC. It's just like
yeah. Well, I didn't want to say
it's like
thing is, in order for the point of comparison to work,
I see.
You know, where they were a C, they're now a B, but they're still A teams. But like, but even then, like, what is a C team? And then I would have had to go through like ascribe numbers.
Here's the thing: is Machi started at again rank 6 out of 8, which is not a great place to be.
Unfortunate.
Below Fireball as well. And they're now sitting at, is it 5th? They're sitting at 5th currently, so you know they've gone from 6th to 5th, 1 rank. But it is still catch up mode for Machi, which is why I think now really to look at we talked about, you know, if you were to power rank these teams, really looking at the second round robin results as a separate thing would give you a pretty accurate representation of that. It's Hong Kong Attitude.
We'll obsess more about Machi a little bit later on in the week when we do actually see them, if I'm not mistaken. But next map pick, we didn't get too much of a chance to talk about this, but then I don't know if I would have had much to say in the predictive sense. Hong Kong Attitude's pick, of course, is going to be Temple of Anubis.
For the first time, not Hanamura.
Yeah.
Because they always pick Hanamura, pretty much.
We did see them pick Temple of Anubis against, I believe, Blank during that kind of period where Blank... Yeah, it was during the period where Blank suddenly dropped Assault to first Flash Wolves, then AHQ, and then I think...
No, that was
Hanamura as well.
That was Hanamura. It absolutely was Hanamura.
The one that went to 3-2.
Yes, that was.
Well, there you go. There you go. I'm a filthy, dirty liar. I swear I've seen them pull out Hanamura before. Maybe it was picked against them. I don't know.
You have seen them pull Hanamura before. That's correct.
Temple of Anubis. Shut up. There's been a lot of games in this tournament, all right? It gets fuzzy. It's blending together, right? We're getting tournaments.
By the time we get to round robin 4, it's just like.
I just have no idea. Yeah. I'm gonna need a cheat sheet. Hey. I'm gonna need notes. I'm gonna have like a cue card.
If we come with binders on round robin 4, like don't even be surprised. It's just let me get back to you. Let me get back to you. I'll just find.
When we talk about that, if I recall correctly, and we pull up our file,
it's a tome. It's just,
yeah. Go to the shelf, pull out Which volume do I need?
Oh my god.
It's not quite that long a tournament, but
But it is a lot of games.
It absolutely
is.
is.
A lot of games.
It is an incredible amount of games. So surely we've seen Hong Kong Attitude on Temple of Anubis at some point. So if we can remember any of those
I'm impressed you've
performances-
remembered what you've remembered so far, because let's see how far we can keep that going.
So we're not even halfway through. We're not even halfway through, and we're all. This is gonna be an effort. But okay, from memory, if it's even there, from memory, how have Hong Kong Attitude actually performed on this map, given that it is their pick, compared to Flash Wolves, who we know have taken it off a lot of quite heavyweight teams?
Oh man, this is gonna go right back to where we're joking about. But if I remember correctly, they had a really good offense, which is interesting because their Hanamura defense is what they seem to be favored on. We're already starting out with the Tourbillon turret as well for the good old side of Hong Kong Attitude, who are going to be defending first. So I think Hong Kong Attitude again are favored on attack for Temple Anubis and favored on defense for Hanamura.
Well, there we go. If only they could play half of one map and then half of the other. That'd be the dream for Hong Kong Attitude. They're like halfway through, they're just like, can we just pick a different map for our defense? What if you could do that? That would be so nuts. In any case, I like the Widowmaker. I like it in the general sense, and I like it in the specific sense here on K-Momo, because they're keeping Zonda on the Genji here as well, which I think is nice.
Whoa, where did that headshot come out of?
That was a left click and a half. I don't know how that's even possible, but he did it, man. CQB, just like threads, and like he did the geometry, right? He did the Pythagoras.
Can you do half a click? What do you get out of half a click?
It's like when you press your mechanical keyboard and it clicks, and then you lift off the key so that it's not like triggering anybody, and then you push it back down.
That sounds like
it doesn't click, but it is a separate key press.
Yeah, that sounds like what if I play Genji and I half click D-flick and complain about dying because it didn't go through.
Yeah.
Anyway,
then you type WTF team in chat.
Yeah. Anyway, Turret did go down to K-Momo at a couple of stages there, so you're at the sort of point where where does the headshots come out of?
Against the Widowmaker as well. The thing that's great about this though is Hong Kong Attitude, by sheer merit of getting a couple of great picks, right when K-Momo was like on the cusp of absolutely tearing Hong Kong Attitude.
Just outsniped the Widow.
Hear me out. So, like, K-Momo was right on the verge of opening this up. Now they've got the Tourbillon in the position where they're a little bit more entrenched, and it's harder for Flash Wolves to dive.
Hong Kong Attitude do still have to position a little bit weird here against the Widowmaker, but I don't think K-Momo's had, well, we haven't seen K-Momo's point of view here, but I don't know if he's had the sort of impact he's been expecting so far. Certainly it's given Flash Wolves control of this upper high ground area on the right side. Now you can see his point of view.
He got two picks like right at the start, like literally right at the, there we go. This is actually the opening that they've been looking for. The crucial thing here was getting CQB. They set themselves up there safely enough for long enough that they were able to wear down all the armor that CQB had built up, so the team didn't just have a sheer health advantage, and then started to get a couple of picks on top of it. Yeah, quick swap. I do like that out of K-Momo, and I like the patience from Flash Wolves to actually stick with that team comp and make it work.
I mean, both teams here going to be sitting at a decent number of ults, which means no crazy 5 or 6 minute attack timers. Really quick offense on the right side. I love the flank coming out from Flash Wolves.
Yeah, I do like the defensive nano boost though onto the Winston. I very much favor that move, but already picking up Mango and getting CQB plus his turret means that a lot of the entrenched position out of Hong Kong Attitude is being negated. No one dead yet on Flash Wolves either as they get K4, the DPS out. I mean, you say no crazy 5-6 minute defenses, but they get the ulting a ting as well, and there's pretty much no ultimates left for Hong Kong Attitude. They've also just done a bunch of swaps onto a bunch of squishy characters, Jin Kao out of the mech. They're going to get time on this point, easily the first 30%, and if they can get more picks, they can get even more than that as well. Mango getting taken out. It's still just squishies. A ting out the gate going to get completely blasted down, and you're a filthy, dirty liar, AVRL. I think they're going to do it. I think they're going to do it in 4 minutes. Yes, they are. Flash Wolves. Hello. A snowball where none should have existed in the middle of the desert.
Yeah, I said 5-6 minutes, so you're still wrong.
You know what?
You're still wrong.
No. I'm not letting you get off on this technicality there, dude, all right? Someone get the soap. It is time to wash your mouth out.
Technically, Hong Kong Attitude are still 4th and Machi is 6th, so there you have 5th, sorry. But yeah, it wasn't a full, it was a bit of, Well, I'll say the difference in timing there was really the fact that Flash Wolves didn't get a clean rollout in the first cap. They struggled for a little bit. They had to reset a couple of fights after, successful headshots from CQB. That Flash Wolves would have been very sad to have.
Yeah.
Again,
You're sitting there, you're the Widowmaker, and then you get headshot like across the
I
map.
think the one against, I think the one against Bacon Jake was
you just be
the
sat
really
there like,
insane
are you
one.
it's like when you got a Hanzo in your game and they're terrible and they miss everything, and then suddenly you get headshot. And you know that there was no skill involved. They were just lucky. They're just like shooting arrows at random, and it happens to be right where you were. And you're like, you know what? That sucks because I'm dead, and now the Hanzo feels validated. The only difference
sucks 'cause I'm dead.
The only difference is CQB is actually really good at Torbjorn.
Yeah, so the early sort of successful defense by Honko Attitude bought them the amount of time. Otherwise, it did look like it. Well, if otherwise that not being the case, that's when you do see the 5 to 6 minute offenses come out.
Yeah, I mean, it really was just that it was a little bit slower. And like I said, they got a couple of early picks out of K-Momo. They looked like they were on the cusp of absolutely breaking down.
And actually, one other thing to note is Hong Kong Attitude should not, on paper, have let that second cap go as easily as they did.
No.
Because they had a roughly equal odds. Now, Flash Wolves had a really fast and well-executed angle of attack, which is, if you're on the defender side, on that left side flank. If you're on the offense, you're on the right side flank. But it was so quick, so well-executed.
Yeah.
They got it immediately, turret down, translated that into kills. That's all they needed.
And that's normally that kind of position, right, where we see that defender's advantage just overcome the other team really, really quickly and easily. I did like the patient play out of Flash Wolves on the first point, though. I mean, a lot of teams, after that first bit with the Widowmaker, where they got a pick L2 and then it didn't work out, a lot of teams would just swap. I liked the patience, and it did pay off for them. Let's see if Hong Kong Attitude already swapping off that Widowmaker, so they don't want to run that exact same thing. Setting up on this flank on the side here to take the high ground. Good pick onto Bacon Jack, but losing K4. And I don't know if they can really keep this one going. That's big. Now, never mind what I was about to say, because they have broken what they need now. Picking up Jongi as well. There's no one here to protect these healers. And Hong Kong Attitude off to a much more snowbally start than Flash Wolves were.
This is looking so easy for Jin Kao. He's just flying on through his diva. Here's a target. Zonda, pick him up. Yeah, cool. Get yourself Sinclair as well. Why don't you just pick up a Jongi while you're at it? And now, Hong Kong Attitude, what was a bit of a struggle for Flash Wolves to secure cap 1, looked pretty easy for Hong Kong.
What was that? Was that a Harvey Norman ad right there? You like the surprise? We've got Sinklers, we've got Jongis, and they've all got to go. I want to stand
up. They've all got to go.
I want to stand at the Department of Immigration saying that.
What does that even mean? What does the immigration part have to do with any of this? I don't know, because Hong Kong Attitude, for all the sort of advantage they got here, they need to actually secure an ultimate. As soon as they can get, they got one ultimate, Transcendence. They need a more offensive ultimate like the Dragon Blade coming out. As soon as they get that, they can start to really turn on the heat and actually get this attack underway properly.
We've got expats, we've got immigrants, and they've all got to go. Anyway, let's see if
wow, offensive.
Yeah, we don't. We love you. Let's see if Hong Kong Attitude. Hello, and Realman's got to go as well. He's in a hurry, and they're all going. Zonda out of the picture as well.
You're not continuing that, sure.
Flash Wolves on a team wipe on Flash Wolves for the low price of $99.99, and Hong Kong Attitude, they're going to take that bargain. They're having a bit of trouble just closing out the last few here, and it does seem the defender's advantage is starting to come through for Flash Wolves now. Even that is a great self-destruct, and Zonda as well. That's a headshot on Jinkao of all things. So yeah, like I said, defender's advantage, and that's not too unsurprising. It's not like Hong Kong Attitude were really getting a snowball out of that. They were just getting a couple of good picks early on in the fight, but that's not quite good enough. They didn't even get percentage points on that one.
And this defense from Flash Wolves is what Hong Kong Attitude should have been able to achieve on their defense as well. So what was, a good first cap is now potentially a bit of a struggle on cap 2. They're not going to get that nice, clean 4+ minute attack, I think. I think they're going to spend a little bit more time than that. Both teams on roughly even ultimates here.
Yeah.
And when you have teams on even ultimates, or just even advantages, defenders are going to come out on top.
That's a gross one as well, especially with that Sombra, like we see these defenders favor so much, because it stops Hong Kong Attitude from really committing their ultimates in an ideal way anyway. If they were looking for a snowball, now they're going to try and throw out K4s, but they've already lost a couple of members, so they probably can't find too much out of this. Realman, good sound barrier to keep the team healthy through it as well, and the trade backs come through. Hong Kong Attitude lose a few too many, and even though it looks a little bit even on paper here, Hong Kong Attitude are going to get worn worn down by this defender's advantage, and Singler is going to have another EMP up well in time for the next fight with Hong Kong Attitude all out of ultimates.
And I think Hong Kong Attitude actually played that a little bit better, a little bit cleaner than Flash Wolves. It is the respawn reinforcements coming into full effect for Flash Wolves, really putting themselves ahead. Like, I just said previously as well, if you're an attacker and you're not coming in with a decent advantage over your opponents, the defender's respawn advantage eventually kicks in and will overwhelm you. There comes the swap now for K4 onto McCree as well. They're going to be looking for picks here. It's all going to be about getting early player advantages and then trying to convert them to further kills and eventually overpowering the defenders before that reinforcement advantage kicks in.
I would have liked to see a few less ultimates committed out of Hong Kong Attitude. I mean, I can abide K4 using the attack visor given the swap was coming through, but in any case, we'll have to see now if they can accrue a bit more of an advantage because, I mean, you do need a big advantage and you need to get it a couple of times, maybe take this one in thirds rather than go for a whole wipe like what Flash Wolves did. But it means that you're not going to attack with as much time if you do go to time bank. And now struggling.
Better to cap than not to.
Yeah, certainly it is. And you do get yourself a little bit of time there if you do manage it in overtime. But in any case, Bacon Jack looking to cut off the reinforcements for Hong Kong Attitude, i.e. K4 looking to kind of waste his time. Singler holding tight, ready with that EMP when he gets a good angle when the commit comes through for Hong Kong Attitude. But
Well,
there we
he's
go,
down.
nice
Okay.
Hunter Killer Shaolin. That's the pick they needed to kick this one off. And already getting more follow-up out of it as a quick transcendence from Mango to keep the team healthy to commit out the rest of the fight. Jongi, I feel like he's just trying to buy time for that respawn advantage to maybe start coming in, but here comes Singler with an EMP. May want to try and use it here as, K4 not able to get into cover, and this is how the respawn advantage can start to overpower you. They pick off Mango as well, even as he gets the mech with that, I believe, right click.
Dragon
So,
Blade?
yeah, Hong Kong Attitude there, well set up to close this one out. Flash Wolves, good use of the defender's advantage, and not even
nice kill.
That is good. He's buying time, but I don't even think they're going to get the third out of this. So this is really just going to feed ult charge away, and he did commit an ult of his own as well. K4 swapping back onto Soldier. Hong Kong Attitude, I think, committed too much on the back end of that.
And swaps immediately back on the McCree. Still just kind of deciding there, and really...
Is it high noon?
And the initial kill onto Sinclair to sort of get themselves in, if we get Hong Kong Attitude in there, was really great. Then converting that onto the second kill as well as immediately 6v4. But K4 dying to the self-destruct, I think, was part of what swung it back into Flash Wolves' favor, because losing one of your critical DPSs that can secure big kills that's a big deal.
I mean, had that not happened, they would have had a flashbang ready for Sinclair to stop that EMP coming out. As
Well, I don't know if you can
respawned
stop
back
him,
in.
but
Well, I mean, they
it'd
would
help
have
you kill him.
They
maybe.
would have had the opportunity, at least. And without him, they really didn't. And like I said, that was all they needed for the defender's advantage to come in from Flash Wolves. This time, though, already going a little bit different. They're a bit more set up on the point. They've lost a couple of members, but they've got a third. They'll color themselves pleased with that as much as they would like to get more. But if they're not going to get more, they have to pull back now, which really means that especially the squishier members need to go on full retreat here. Not even feed ultimate charge as they go out. Flash Wolves need to commit to a bit of a route without going too deep themselves. And yeah, both teams just resetting properly off the back end of that.
Actually, Hong Kong Attitude have a bit of a timing advantage here. If they can get themselves in while EMP is down, it may just be what they need. And part of breaking past the Sombra defense is exactly finding those gaps where EMP is not going to be available, at least not immediately, and leveraging that very tight timing window.
Jin Kao tried to nerf Flash Wolves to make some space, but it didn't even work. They didn't have to back up at all, and they just smacked damn onto Hong Kong Attitude. Picking up K4 at the top of that really sealed the deal, and Jin Kao had only just got back into the mech. Using that, throwing that out to make space only works if you actually do make space and then have the team to follow it up, and Hong Kong Attitude hadn't quite finished laying the ground.
And look at that full deck of cards on Flash Wolves as well. I'm not usually a fan of teams holding on to full 6 ultimates because it usually means you haven't had a fight to actually commit into, which is a big waste of time. But on defense, perfectly acceptable. In fact, it's not just acceptable, it's preferred. Being able to sit on 6 ultimates on defense is about perfect.
I like this one. Going very deep here is Sinclair, but he was a little bit too late to stop the Transcendence, which stopped up Zonda's Dragon Blade, and actually maybe an overcommit by Flash Wolves has given Hong Kong Attitude a big window. Now desperately looking to get something out of this is a Ting, but he's really struggling. They are finally getting a trade back, getting K-Momo, but that might not be enough to keep this one going. They do pick up Jongi, the sound barrier not quite coming through in time, and now actually the defender's advantage can start to rack up for Flash Wolves if they can be quick about this, but no such luck. Bacon Jack is going to really have to duck and weave to buy time, and yeah, look at the progress. That's all that counts. Even if you do it in overtime, you do get a bit of time added to the clock, so there we go. Everything thrown in at the last minute by Flash Wolves, but a bit of an early commit, and it bites them.
Let me wrap that play up in one word: hubris. Because Flash Wolves did not need to do that.
They all absolutely.
How do you? I just complimented. I was
what,
like, man.
What I thought you were going to say when you were talking about, oh, I don't like seeing all 6 ultimates, is I was thinking when teams often have 6 ultimates, often that hubris kicks in and they go, we got 6, we're definitely going to win this, and they just go ahead and commit. They're like, let's commit early, let's just win the fight, let's just steamroll it. And then they did exactly that. I was surprised that you said what you said. It wasn't wrong, but as it turns out, the thing that went wrong was exactly what I was thinking.
It's wrong on attack, actually. Yeah. It's wrong to have 6 ultimates stacked up to a point where, like, what went so wrong that you didn't have a chance to ultimate before you hit 6? Like, that's a big issue. But the thing is, back to what Flash Wolves just did, like I said, unnecessary. They completely got punished for what they did. They couldn't fully commit because they threw the Sombra out there, EMP'd, cool, but, you know, where was the follow-up? Everyone sort of just started to get picked up, lost 3 members. Hong Kong Attitude didn't even have ultimates, didn't have anything realistically. They just got the individual pickups on their own, which, by the way, so far has been Hong Kong Attitude's opportunity to come back, and they've used that multiple times. They've been able to get these picks in there just sort of seemingly out of the blue.
It is exactly what happened when Hong Kong Attitude were defending King's Row in overtime against Flash Wolves, where they tried to be proactive, they threw out a bunch of ultimates, and then Flash Wolves had like the one defensive ultimate that absorbed it all, and then they came back swinging. It was exactly that. They committed a ton of aggressive ultimates right into a Transcendence and gave up positional advantage.
No, it's even worse than that. There was no Transcendence.
Yes, there was. It did come out, but that's the thing, it came out really early out of Mango. But in any case, semantics. It's an unusual mistake from Flash Wolves, especially when we've been complimenting them so far. But speaking of so far already on this offense,
nice deny.
Good,
that was a good deny. They didn't let the turret go down. They just replaced
This actually has to be a full hold out of Hong Kong Attitude. Amalaya, once again, they do not get time on this one. But Mango getting picked off and K-Momo, great position, looking to get even more out of this if he can get CQB, provided he doesn't get headshot or Winstoned off this high ground, but he is indeed going to get Winstoned to death. And Flash Wolves are just going to have to back up for now.
Not the best way to go down, getting Winston to death here.
No, very unfortunate.
If CQB can just pick up some more of these crucial headshots onto...
You only have to get a third here, Flash Wolves.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be tough for Hong Kong Attitude, but it's to the stage where Flash Wolves don't also have the world's greatest amount of time, so we'll see.
Ooh, Ting needs to be careful to not overcommit onto this one, as Flash Wolves are actually the ones set up on the high ground. And a couple of trades back and forth that really favors Hong Kong Attitude. And guess who's powered up? It's a Ting. Let's see if he can make something happen with it. And yeah, they are getting the kills to follow it up. So good payoff coming out of that ultimate. But he needs to not go too deep. They need to let themselves get healed up, because the attackers are the ones with the spawn advantage. And they are the ones who only need to cap the third.
Well, as long as Flash Wolves can bank themselves a few critical ults, not a full 6, but you know, maybe 3, maybe 4 of just what they need, they should be able to cap it out, because like you said, 1/3, 33% is everything that need. Hong Kong Attitude currently sitting on absolutely nothing, and eventually Hong Kong Attitude are going to get bled out.
They need them fast though, because already 3 ultimates here for Flash Wolves, and they're very good aggressive ultimates as well. But the Molten Core is up. That's a really hard one to fight through, so provided that Torbjorn doesn't get picked, there we go. Yeah, quick flick out on the Molten Core. Zonda going aggressive, but that's not going to pay off.
Down.
They're throwing everything at it, including that Transcendence there as well. And yeah, he is down a Ting. Good timing on his ultimate, and just struggling to fight through the Molten Core. Flash Wolves, they gave up their little moment of ultimate advantage, and they are actually running down a bit of their clock here. Hong Kong Attitude though getting picked off. This isn't much further left to go on this point, and CQB being the one down is actually quite crucial. They're trying to keep this one alive as best as they can, namely Bacon Jack here looking to secure this one out, and they might just get it as Shaolin and Jin Kao go down, and they kind of pull it out of the hat there. They did everything right at Hong Kong Attitude up until the moment where Bacon Jack was Bacon Jack.
Pretty much, and I think if I want to really take this one back a bit and just sort of identify where I think Hong Kong Attitude really went wrong as a singular moment, it probably goes back to their initial defense. On second cap, they were at a similar place to where Flash Wolves were on their second cap, and Flash Wolves defended. Hong Kong Attitude let that one go in a single push against Flash Wolves now. And this moment as well, where for, I don't know if this is the exact moment, but when K4 died to the self-destruct, was another moment where it looked like it was going to be in the favor of Hong Kong Attitude.
Had that not happened, different game.
Big change. It was a big change.
Exactly. And that very first one from Flash Wolves, it's kind of hard to say exactly whether it was Flash Wolves playing it well or Hong Kong Attitude playing it poorly. It was, in truth, a little bit of both. I feel like Hong Kong Attitude hadn't swapped up quick enough. I think they felt they had more time than they actually had to get themselves set up for that defense. I mean, we even saw the Sombra had only just come through, hadn't hacked a single health pack when the commit came in for Flash Wolves, and it's not like Mango took a long time to die, right? He was one of the first ones to die in that fight. He just, swapped onto something else and healed up some people and then went onto the Sombra. So I feel like both teams made, or rather, Hong Kong Attitude made a few mistakes. Flash Wolves played it very well, and when you put the two together, it was just enough to tip the balance.
I think for Flash Wolves, is they absolutely, timing-wise, took advantage of the opening that they had, which was Hong Kong Attitude still looking for a little bit of time to set up, like you said. Mango Joe still looking for health packs to hack. And before you know it, Flash Wolves are at your front step. In fact, they're not even at your front step, they're kicking down your door.
Yeah.
And Flash Wolves were so quick on their offense, again, taking the flank route again, around the corner, around the side, and immediately straight onto the point, get the fight started. Hong Kong Attitude not even prepared. That was, execution-wise, on attack for Flash Wolves, really well done.
And I was saying before as well, I mean, the way Flash Wolves have been playing compared to Hong Kong Attitude, it's not as flashy, but it's a little bit more reliable. They're not so much about, getting that small window and absolutely blasting it open. But in that one situation where they were given a window, much like what Hong Kong Attitude do, they blasted it open, and it was really flashy, and it was really impressive. So it's actually good to see that on top of being consistent, on top of being able to create their own opportunities and win with it, when they do get given an opportunity, much like Hong Kong Attitude, they run with it and win in convincing fashion.
I kind of wanted to see that up from Hong Kong Attitude as well on a couple of their attacks, because I noted, look, when you're playing against a Sombra defense, there are very tight timing windows where there's not going to be an EMP in play, and the EMP, at least when it does come in play, is not going to happen at the start of a fight, which will deny your ability to be proactive, or deny your ability to initiate. It's not going to happen. So Hong Kong Attitude needed to be able to find those openings, and you almost got to consider, had Flash Wolves not thrown their final fight at 6 ults, we might not even have gone to time back.
Yeah, it's not even that Hong Kong Attitude found a small opening and ran with it. It's actually that Flash Wolves opened the door and then
come in, Flash Wolves.
Yeah, come on in, right? Because there wasn't a window, right? There was no opening. Nothing was down. But what happened is Sinclair and Zonda both went right up to the enemy team. Sinclair decided to go for an EMP, but it had already been read. Mango was ulting, so they couldn't stop the Transcendence, which then absorbed the Dragon Blade that also got committed at the wrong time. And that was one ultimate for 2. I think also the Pulse Bomb was thrown in there. And it just spelled disaster through and through for Flash Wolves. It was, like you said, hubris. They went, well, Hong Kong Attitude don't even have a window to run with here. We can just go with it. We'll just win if we throw our ultimates at it. But that is throwing discipline out the window, man.
Which, for a team, particularly on King's Row, where we applauded, I specifically applauded them so much for their discipline and being able to read situations correctly. This wasn't a case of them not reading the situation correctly. It was more like, we know what we should be doing. We're not going to do that. We're going to do something really out of left field that is totally unnecessary, totally risky, and the payoff, to be honest, isn't even better than what the original payoff for playing safe would be anyway.
I mean, both result in you winning. But that's the thing, right? I mean, we often see that over time. These are the kinds of little things that teams do sometimes, and very rarely does it cost you, but when it does, you're like, oh man. And then you never do it again, right? Like, you play so cautiously, you play super, like, slow and steady wins the race when you're in that position the second time around. And they will be in that position another time, I guarantee you. So let's hope it's a mistake that they only make once.
Taking a look at
This
the
is interesting.
hero lineups as well.
I'm liking this here. It shows. It's interesting, I think, on Assault because of what we were talking about with compositional setups. Even though I feel like that applies less to Assault, given that you do see things like Widowmaker at certain points and things like that. But on the whole, I liked how Flash Wolves set themselves up and then More importantly, how they executed it. I would say the same for Hong Kong Attitude, but when the execution fell flat, I can't help but feel like maybe they should have taken some slightly different things in places.
I think both teams at a certain point got fairly predictable as well. Hong Kong Attitude running Torbjorn always on defense, particularly for the first cap, and then the Widowmaker coming up from K-Momo as expected again for Flash Wolves, always on their initial attack. So at some point there was opportunity for both teams to be able to say, we know a little bit too much, and we actually have something new here as well. Player of the game.
Gonna be Bacon Jack, and I said it right at the end there, right? Hong Kong Attitude did everything right until suddenly Bacon Jack was Bacon Jack. And he just got a couple of kills out of nowhere. I mean, sometimes it does happen.
Sounds like CQB on Torbjorn.
Yeah, I always say, right, when that sort of thing happens, it's not something that a team should ever rely on. And some teams do make the mistake of relying on it. Flash Wolves, though, they don't rely on it. They're just a good team, and then when it does happen, they're like, hell yeah, awesome. And with that, we're going to jump on into an interview with Flash Wolves.
With the player of the game, nonetheless.
What a shocker.
好，这边呢，我有几个问题想问他，就是网友大大们呢都称你是最强的闪光，你觉得谁是你的对手？
People say you're the best tracer. Who do you think is
对，
your biggest competition?
还是都没有？
应该是 Blank 的 I Eat Up 吧。
And I you up
那
and
如果
blank is
说在这世界上
my biggest
硬要选的话，你有没有想要追随他的？你觉得就是很崇拜他的那个？
目前是没有啦，
底下说是你自己，
就是做自己是最好的。
嗯，
对，应该是做自己是最好的。
He's
好，
not really
希望有一
focusing
天
on
你能
anything,
为
he's
国
just kind
争
of
光一下，好不好？
looking
掌
at
声
his。own play and not really considering other tracers at the moment.
好，再来，接下来下一题呢是要问说，如果11月的世界杯啊，如果你只能选择你2个队员，你只能选2个哦，带他们去的话，你会选择谁？
哇，这问题，
If you can only choose
这
two
问题会
members
让
from your team to
队
go
友
to
有
the
心
World
结，
Cup,
你知道吗？
who would you
不
choose?
会放轻松嘛，他们可能在后面就想说，哎，你平常对你不错哦，
应该是重打和季囧吧。
为什么？
Zonda and Jongi?
重打的原因是因为他去过 BlizzCon 嘛，所以你跟他走的话，应该会发现蛮多东西的。
Zonda's already been to
或者什么地
BlizzCon,
方好
so
吃之
he
类的
knows。his way around.
啊，季囧的话，我是觉得他年轻啦，然后他需要更多大比赛的经验，所以
And
我觉得大家去看看世界是很。
Jongi's a young
好感
player
人哦，
and
大家
he
也
could
掌声一
use
下
the
好不好？
international experience.
好，那就再次恭喜闪电狼呢赢得呢这一场的比赛。那下一场呢也是一样，由闪电狼迎战 Sun Sister。那在下一场比赛前呢，我们的采访区呢由闪电狼带来呢队伍的访问，我们画面呢就交给分析台。
And congratulations to Flash Wolves once again as they get ready to get into the game against Sun Sister. We've also got Jin Kao on the couch. A bit of an interview as well.
He looks very comfy. So, I don't know that there's a whole lot to say about this series, right? Except that it bodes well for Flash Wolves, doesn't bode well for Hong Kong Attitude. We talked about it a bit in the break between those games. Hong Kong Attitude now feel like the 5th place team. It just hasn't happened yet. And potentially, depending on how they play and then how Five will play as well, they may even be the 6th place team. I'm not going to say it just yet, but that's where they're at now, right? That's the question that's being asked about them. It's not, can they push into top 3? It's, can they survive and then maybe push into top 3? Flash Wolves, it is looking like they had a bit of a rough patch at the top of this round robin, but are very much looking like a top 3 again.
For Hong Kong Attitude, actually, they impressed me on King's Row in particular. Despite losing still, Temple of Anubis I thought was a little bit shaky. Nepal, still a little bit shaky, but there were signs there where for a team like Hong Kong Attitude, right now, for me, it's not a question of, are they going to be good enough to beat Flash Wolves? Because clearly not, but can they hold on to 4th place? And based on that performance alone, I want to say it's possible. I don't want to say absolutely yes right now because Machi have just recently beaten them, but I don't think Machi are as ahead of Hong Kong Attitude enough that Hong Kong Attitude can't strike back. And I think there will be chances for Hong Kong Attitude still to reclaim that 4th place spot.
Sure, and you're right. Like it is still a possible thing. The unfortunate thing is, where formerly they were the, if you will, 4th place gatekeeper, you'd hope that they'd be a little bit more favored coming into a game against someone like Machi than they are now. I mean, we go, well, it's possible, whereas in an ideal situation, you'd want to go, yeah, it's pretty much a sure thing, and maybe they push for top 3 as well. And I don't feel like that's the case anymore, unfortunately. And the reality is, you only make playoffs if you make top 3. Like, that's the only way you get in, no exceptions. Being 4th place gatekeeper, eventually it becomes not good enough. For the first 2 round robins, it's good enough because that's the position from which you can push top 3. But if that 4th place spot is already in contention and we're only just halfway through, you do start to worry about Hong Kong attitude.
The tough space there is to say top 3 is so secure currently towards the end of the 2nd round robin, and I'm not just talking about in terms of points, in terms of leaderboard standing, but in terms of the actual skill being displayed by the teams. It's almost like the top 3 club is full. Yeah. No more memberships until next year. They got 3 spaces literally, and they're taken up. And I don't think right now there's any other team, potentially maybe Machi, if they continue to pull ahead on their current trajectory. If it's exponential and they just keep going, yeah, they can maybe break it. But it's looking so secure. AHQ, Blank, and Flash Wolves are all 3 of them able to take games off each other now, which means that AHQ and Flash Wolves have stepped up to the level of Blank. And I don't know. I don't see Machi and Hong Kong Attitude being able to really get there just yet.
Right now it's hard to say that the other teams have. Like, what we're really talking about here is, that's the club, and we're talking about who's the bouncer, right? And the bouncer is still not in the club.
No, he has to stand outside.
Yeah, even if Machi finally beat up the bouncer, and they're like, screw your cues, man, I'm going to go in anyway. They go in and they're like, I can't get to the I can't move, I'm out, I'll see you. Like, you're right, if there's no space in the club, there's no space in the club. It's not just good enough to hit that 4th place spot. I mean, as much as it's true for Hong Kong Attitude, right? It's not good enough to have that 4th place spot. It's not good enough to be the bouncer. It's not good enough to be that gatekeeper. You do have to push for top 3, and you're right, it doesn't actually feel like any of these other teams right now are able to do that, aside from the ones that are currently top 3. It looked for a while like maybe Flash Wolves are slipping, like maybe that was going to be someone's in, but I can't say that's the case anymore. Flash Wolves, the one big takeaway from tonight and also last week was they had a shaky spot, but they are still looking good. They are a top 3 team. That hasn't really changed. The only thing that's changed is the relative level of the top 3 teams.
Yeah, which is quite exciting because it's no longer defined like, Blank are just always and will always be the favorites. Now it's actually to the stage where anybody can potentially be that number 1 team, and a top 3 kind of looks like anybody. It's a very fluid top 3, and it does almost seem like a bit of a fight for 4th place. It's usually like, fight for 2nd. It's a fight for 4th place right now because teams, if you're not currently anywhere close to the top 3, or even if you're sitting around the 4th or 5th place, you are just fighting to be the next best team currently before you can even really say, now we want to break top 3.
It's interesting, isn't it? If anything, in that top 3, the team currently with the most questions about them is actually Blank. Because of those 3 teams, they are the team that has most recently dropped series. Now, they've dropped series against those other top 3 teams. After doing that, they then beat Machi, which was a good sign for them, but we're not really going to know if they've recovered or if that's going to be a trend now that they lose those sorts of matches until the 3rd round robin. And we will find out pretty quickly from that point, but at any rate, actually it could turn out that Blank are the quote-unquote weaker of the top 3 teams, but that still doesn't matter if the other 5 teams can't even beat Blank.
Pretty much. I think that's essentially the climate of all the teams in the country.
And that has been the case so far, right? It doesn't matter if you're only the 3rd best team in the top 3 if no one else can even beat the 3rd best team. And that includes teams like Machi, who did take a match off Flash Wolves. It includes teams like Hong Kong Attitude even, who have gone to 5 games with Blank. It includes some of these upsets and some of these interesting performances we've had out of teams, some of the slip-ups we've had from top teams, right? We can talk about how these top 3 teams are jostling for position and how their relative strengths may be, but that's only going to become relevant come playoffs, right? None of these other teams really have made a solid run at top 3 yet. There is still time for it to happen, but I don't know where it's going to come from.
Yeah, and of course our next game is going to be Flash Wolves and Sun Sister as well, so, this is now Flash Wolves taking up a couple of expected wins for themselves, and even less opportunity for these sort of bottom tier teams to get themselves through, as
I'd be absolutely stunned if Flash Wolves do drop the one to Sun Sister. But in any case, that would actually have them finishing off the week at a quite handy 11-3, which you'd colour yourself fairly impressed at. And that would, if I'm not mistaken, be how they finish off the second round robin as well. I think that is all their matches. And, well, we'll see how that one goes after this break. We are going to be right on back, of course, with Flash Wolves taking on Sun Sister. The standings almost tell a bit of a story in and of themselves there. But don't go anywhere before we hit up that match, guys. We will be right back.